Chapter 407. A man appeared behind Zhou Xian. It was a soul and it was Zhou Xian. A trap. Zhou Xian knew that he'd fallen into a trap. He didn't panic and turned around. At this moment over a dozen experts appeared in the surroundings. All of them were at the Supreme Realm. Obviously the entire Dugu clan had come out. The leader was Dugu Feng. Dugu Feng stared coldly at Zhou Xian. "I never expected it to be you." Zhou Xian laughed, surprised. Dugu Feng spoke coldly. "Zhou Xian, I never expected you to come to my Dugu clan. You've got guts." Zhou Xian smiled faintly. "Are you sure I came alone?" Dugu Feng's eyes narrowed. "Who else is behind you?" Zhou Xian laughed. "Take a guess." Dugu Feng was about to speak when Dugu Lian suddenly laughed. "What's the point of wasting time with him? Kill him." As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Xian stomped his right foot on the ground. In an instant, a powerful aura swept out from his body, causing the entire hall to collapse. Invincible golden body and god set. At this moment he had no choice but to use his trump card against so many experts. Dugu Lian's face fell when he saw Zhou Xian donning the god set. "Watch out." As soon as he finished speaking, a golden beam of light pierced through the head of one of the experts from the Dugu clan. Instant kill. It was an instant kill. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Because it was too exaggerated. Killing a Supreme Realm expert in an instant? At this moment Zhou Xian looked at Dugu Feng. The latter's face fell and he was about to retreat when Zhou Xian suddenly vanished. In the next moment, a beam of light appeared in front of him. Soul-setting sword. This sword was targeted at souls. Dugu Feng's heart trembled when he saw Zhou Xian's sword, because he could feel how terrifying it was. If he still had his fleshly body he naturally wouldn't be afraid of this sword. However, he was now in soul form and his strength wasn't just a little bit weaker than before. Especially since this sword was specifically targeted at souls. Dugu Feng didn't hesitate and turned to flee. However, Zhou Xian's sword was even faster. Before everyone's eyes, Zhou Xian's sword pierced through Dugu Feng's forehead. Dugu Feng's soul instantly started to turn illusory after being pierced by the sword. At this moment, Dugu Feng's face was ashen. He knew that he was finished. On the other side, Dugu Lian, who was also a soul body, retreated rapidly and retreated behind a group of experts. This was because he could sense. After killing Dugu Feng with a single strike, Zhou Xian grinned. This grin was somewhat ferocious and it made one shudder. Opposite Zhou Xian, Dugu Lian hurriedly said, "Please welcome the forefather. Quickly invite the ancestor here." Meanwhile, Zhou Xian suddenly vanished and then a ray of golden light flashed. The head of another expert from the Dugu clan flew into the air. It was a slaughter. After he utilized the invincible gold armor and the god set, Zhou Xian's strength could be said to have risen to an extremely terrifying level. Especially the god set, it allowed him to be invincible. Because even those experts at the Supreme Realm couldn't harm him at all. It didn't take long for Zhou Xian to start a slaughter within the Dugu clan estate, and practically no one could stop a single strike of his sword. Dugu Feng could in the past, but unfortunately he'd been heavily injured by that little demon beast at the 9th level. Numerous shrill cries resounded incessantly from the Dugu clan. On the other hand, Zhou Xian's target was Dugu Lian. He chased after Dugu Lian madly because he hadn't forgotten how Dugu Lian had treated Yiling that day. Dugu Lian's expression changed drastically when he saw that Zhou Xian was targeting him, and he retreated repeatedly. Meanwhile, the experts of the Dugu clan died one after another in front of him. At this moment, Dugu Lian was truly panicking. They'd set up a trap for Zhou Xian. However, he hadn't expected that Zhou Xian's strength would actually be terrifying to such an extent after he donned the god set. Their ambush had failed and they'd been killed instead. Dugu Lian retreated repeatedly, and it didn't take long for him to arrive at the Dugu clan's ancestral hall. Meanwhile, Zhou Xian pursued him all the way here. After he killed an expert of the Dugu clan, Zhou Xian slashed his sword towards the ancestral hall. However, a mysterious force suddenly appeared in the surroundings when it was just a few meters away from the ancestral hall. In an instant. Bang! Zhou Xian's sword energy instantly shattered. Seeing this, Dugu Lian suddenly turned his head to look at the ancestral hall. At this moment, Zhou Xian, who wasn't far away, turned around and fled. His speed was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye he'd already disappeared into the horizon. The moment Zhou Xian disappeared, an illusory white figure suddenly floated out from the ancestral hall. As this white figure appeared, the surrounding space directly trembled. Seeing this white figure, Zhou Xian hurriedly bowed deeply. "Greetings, ancestor." As he spoke, he turned his head to look at the spot where Xian was originally standing. However, that spot was now empty. Escaped. Zhou Xian's expression instantly became extremely ugly, as if he'd eaten shit. Xian left Yu City and entered a mountain range. In a cave, as soon as Xian entered the cave, he directly lay on the ground, and then his whole body began to twitch. Backlash. Every time he used the invincible golden body and the god set, he would suffer a backlash. Although it was not a good feeling, he had no other choice. Right now, if he didn't use these external items, how could he fight against the Zhou family? Just like this, after a day and a night, Xian slowly woke up in the cave. At this moment he still felt weak all over. Xian hurriedly took out the purple fire crystal and began to devour it. At this moment Jian Zizai suddenly said, "If you didn't escape just now, you would have died without a doubt." Xian said in a low voice, "Even with the god set, I still can't beat that person?" Jian Zizai sneered. "Right now, if we were to talk about your normal strength, you wouldn't even be able to beat a supreme realm expert. If it weren't for the invincible golden body and the god set, you would have died a long time ago. However, the martial emperor golden body and the god set aren't invincible. Moreover, you can't unleash the true power of the god set. To put it simply, that person can't destroy the god set, but he can destroy you. Do you understand?" Xian nodded slightly. "Understood." 2 hours later, Xian left the cave and went straight to the Zhou family. Not long after, Xian arrived before the Zhou family's mansion again. This time he still concealed his aura. It wasn't over yet. Very soon Xian snuck into the stock market silently again. Half a quarter of an hour later, corpses appeared in the Zhou family. These corpses had appeared without a sound. In a large hall, Zhou Xian, who sat at the head of the table, stared ahead. At this moment, basically all the experts of the Zhou family were in this hall. In the hall, an expert of the Zhou family said in a low voice, he's here again." Zhou Xian looked at Zhou Ming, who was beside him. "Uncle Ming, you've always been resourceful. What do you think?" Zhou Ming was silent for a moment and then he said, "This person definitely won't let this matter go. If he doesn't come out, the Zhou family can't do anything to him." "Unless?" Zhou Xian hurriedly asked. "Unless what?" Zhou Ming said in a low voice, "Unless we find help." Zhou Xian frowned slightly. "Find the Gu family or the Yan family?" Zhou Ming said softly, "The Yan family will definitely not help us because the Zhou family has always been close to the Gu family. They can't wait for us to be destroyed. Thus we can only find the Gu family. If we do that, we must sacrifice something." Everyone instantly fell silent when they heard this. "Sacrifice something?" Zhou Ming laughed bitterly. "The Yan family doesn't have good intentions and the Gu family isn't kind either. If the Zhou family asks for help from them, they'll definitely suck our blood. Moreover, the Zhou family won't dare to have any designs on that treasure in the future." When he spoke up to this point, he shook his head slightly. Actually, the Zhou family doesn't have the ability to think about that treasure anymore. Now there are only 2 paths before us. Either we make peace with Xian or we find a way to annihilate him. "Make peace?" Zhou Xian laughed coldly. "Uncle Ming, do you think we can still make peace with him? He killed my father and so many people from the Zhou family. How can we make peace with him?" Zhou Ming said solemnly, "Then there's only one path left." Zhou Xian said fiercely, "If this person doesn't die, the Zhou family will definitely be destroyed in the future. No, the Zhou family is already in no peace. Let's find the Gu family." Zhou Ming looked at Zhou Xian and said solemnly, "We'll have to pay a huge price." Zhou Xian looked at Zhou Ming coldly. "Our family is about to be annihilated." Zhou Ming sighed softly. "Then let me go to the Gu family." Zhou Xian nodded. "That would be for the best." Zhou Ming turned and left. In the hall, Zhou Xian's eyes were closed. No one knew what he was thinking. In the entire Zhou family mansion, people were dying at every moment. It could be said that the Zhou family was in a state of panic. Many people had already started to escape, especially the servants of the Zhou family. Most of them had already escaped. Facing this person in the dark, the Zhou family was helpless. In the room, Zhou Xian, who was already a soul, was also panicking. Originally, the Dugu family's Dugu Feng had the ability to keep Yi Xian in check. However, Dugu Feng insisted on going to the 9th level of Inferno Hell and was heavily injured by that mysterious demon beast. As of now, there was no one in the Dugu family who could keep Yi Xian in check. That day, the Dugu family's patriarch appeared, but Yi Xian turned around and escaped. That day, Dugu Lian almost died from anger. Wait. All Dugu Lian could do now was wait. Wait for Dugu Ming to invite the experts of the Gu family. At this moment, Dugu Ming suddenly raised his head to look outside the door. There a bloody head flew in. Seeing this scene, Dugu Lian's eyelids twitched and he hurriedly stood up. At this moment, another bloody head flew in. P.S. After I was discharged from Junyi with my father, we came to the county. Because of uremia and diabetes, he had to go to the hospital for dialysis 3 times a week. I thought that everything would slowly get better, but I didn't expect that yesterday he would suddenly lose all his strength. I brought him to the hospital. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, he went into shock due to low blood pressure. The doctors couldn't save him and he passed away at 10 o'clock. There's only one chapter today. Tomorrow, the day after that, or even for many days, there might be fewer and fewer updates. I've been writing the book for 4 years and there's been a lot of things happening this year. The promised updates are getting fewer and fewer. Sorry. I don't like to write chicken soup articles, but I still want to say this. Take good care of your parents, take good care of your wife and children, and also take good care of yourself. Especially your parents. Most of your friends' parents might be old, so while you still have the chance, take care of them and be filial. Chapter 408. Inside the house, the expressions of Dugu Lian and the others were extremely ugly. However, no one dared to go out. The current Yi Xian could be said to be an invincible existence after putting on that godly outfit. Even the Supreme Realm was no match for him. And in the field, no one had surpassed the Supreme Realm. Wait. The only thing they could do now was wait. Wait for the experts of the Gu family to arrive. Outside the house, in a corner, Yi Xian stood quietly. Even if someone passed by in front of him, they would not be able to discover his existence. Chaotic energy. Yi Xian discovered that if he became stronger, the chaotic energy would also become stronger. Inside the prison pagoda, Jian Zizai suddenly said, "Why don't you just go in and slaughter them all?" Yi Xian said calmly, "There are at least 6 Supreme Realm experts inside. If I go in now, they will definitely fight to the death. At that time, I will have to put on that godly outfit again and suffer the backlash." Intuition told him that his enemies would not only be the Dugu family because there were many people who coveted his prison pagoda. And if he suffered the backlash again, he might not be as lucky as before. Jian Zizai said, "You have a lot of thoughts." At this point she paused slightly and said, "No matter what, the Dugu family is still related to you by blood. Do you really want to be so ruthless?" Yi Xian sneered, "Miss Jian, tell me, if the 3 of us fall into their hands, what will happen to us?" Jian Zizai said softly, "We will definitely die without a complete corpse." Yi Xian said with a smile, "So why should I show mercy? They don't treat me as family, why should I treat them as family? I'm not stupid." Jian Zizai said with a smile, "Indeed, I will treat others how they treat me." Yi Xian suddenly said with a smile, "Miss Jian, you don't seem to want me to die so much recently?" Jian Zizai said, "I just haven't waited for the opportunity." Yi Xian chuckled and did not say anything else. He turned around and disappeared. Plunder. Now that Dugu Lian and the others did not dare to come out, it could be said that no one in the entire Dugu residence could stop him. Moreover, the Dugu family was a big family. So, how could they be lacking in treasures? Soon Yi Xian began to frantically plunder the Dugu family's treasures. After a while, Yi Xian started to get excited. In the Dugu family, he had found 3 saint-level treasures: a long spear, a long rope, and a broken saber. All 3 items were saint tier. In addition to this, he had obtained over 10 million purple Genesis crystals. Including his previous gains, he now had over 15 million purple Genesis crystals. This amount of wealth could be said to be a lot. He had also obtained countless miscellaneous items. Although each item was not that precious, if all of them were gathered together, it would still be a considerable sum. He had made a killing. This time it could be said that he had made a killing. After he finished plundering, Yi Xian was about to leave silently. But right at this moment, 3 invisible pressures suddenly appeared in the sky above the Dugu clan estate. Following the appearance of these 3 pressures, An invisible force suddenly began to frantically sweep through every corner of the Dugu clan estate. Sensing this scene, Xian's expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to quietly retreat, the force suddenly swept over him. However, the force did not sense him. Seeing this, Xian immediately heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, Jian Zizai suddenly said, "What are you so nervous about? This chaotic qi is a divine item after all. How can these people see through it?" Xian nodded slightly. Understood. After saying this, he quietly retreated. You're not going to kill Dugulian and the others? Killing people is divided into fast and slow. I want to kill them slowly. You obviously know that you can't beat them, so you want to run. I promise you the Dugu clan will definitely perish. The door to the room suddenly opened and a white-robed old man walked in. Seeing this white-robed old man, Dugulian, who was sitting at the head of the table, immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly got up to greet him. So it's Senior Gauze. Thank you, Senior Gauze, for coming to help. The old man called Gu Xiu glanced at the people around him and smiled. My Gu clan and the Dugu clan have been good friends for generations. Now that the Dugu clan is in trouble, how can my Gu clan sit back and do nothing? Now my Gu clan and the Dugu clan have sent 3 experts here. With them guarding this place, that Xian will definitely not dare to appear again. Dugulian said in a deep voice, Senior Gauze, this Xian is not simple. Gauze smiled slightly. I know. However, if he dares to appear, he will definitely die. Dugulian said with a smile. That's good. Gauze also smiled slightly, but his smile was a little strange. Xian returned to the 9th floor of the infernal purgatory. As soon as he reached the 9th floor, a beautiful figure threw herself into his arms. Yiling. At this moment, Yiling had already woken up. Yiling hugged Xian tightly, crying loudly. Not far away, Dugu Xian stood quietly looking at the 2 siblings. Xian lightly patted Yiling's back and smiled. Don't cry, big brother is here. Yiling's head continuously rubbed against Xian's chest, causing Xian's face to be covered with snot. After a long time, Yiling's emotions gradually calmed down. At this moment, Dugu Xian walked over and Yiling hid behind Xian, not looking at Dugu Xian. Seeing this, Dugu Xian smiled bitterly and retracted her hand. How is the Dugu clan? Xian said, almost all of them have died. Dugu Xian said in a deep voice, be careful of the Gu clan. Gu clan? Xian was a little puzzled. Why? Dugu Xian said in a low voice, even though the Dugu clan is one of the 3 great clans along with the Gu clan, the Dugu clan's strength is far inferior to the Gu clan. All those years ago the Gu clan asked me to join them because they hoped to obtain that treasure from you. Now that they know that treasure is in your possession, they will definitely not let you off. Xian was slightly curious. How did you obtain this treasure all those years ago? He'd always been extremely curious about the origins of this treasure, and he knew that this treasure had always been in Dugu Xian's possession. Dugu Xian fell silent for a moment before she said, I'll tell you in the future, all right? Xian nodded. All right. Dugu Xian walked over to Xian, glanced at Xian and said softly, leave the heavenly region and go far away, all right? Xian shook his head. It's too late. He naturally knew that his best option now was to leave this place. Unfortunately, he knew that if he brought Yiling and Dugu Xian out, they would definitely be beaten up. There were too many people who had designs on him now. No matter where he ran to, these forces would not let him go. Moreover, he would not leave until the Dugu clan was destroyed. Dugu Xian glanced at Xian and his sister with a complicated expression. She felt extremely guilty. At this moment she hoped that the treasure was not on Xian. Without this treasure, perhaps Xian would not be so outstanding, but he would not be in so much trouble. In fact, she had greatly underestimated the value of this treasure. At this moment, the little demonic beast not far away suddenly said, Human. Xian and his mother looked at the little demonic beast. The little demonic beast stared at Xian. Your master is not here yet? Xian said indifferently, Why? The little demonic beast stared at Xian. These days I've been thinking, why would she accept a human as a disciple? This is absolutely impossible. Moreover, she is not from the same air as you. Therefore you can't be her disciple. As it spoke, a powerful aura suddenly appeared in the surroundings. Dugu Xian's face changed. She hurriedly stood in front of Xian and his sister. Yi Xian pulled Zhou Xian and walked in front of the little demonic beast. The little demonic beast stared coldly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Are you sure I'm not her disciple?" The little demonic beast said, "Prove it to me." As its voice fell, a powerful aura directly enveloped Yi Xian. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Miss Jian, help me." Jian's eye did not respond. Yi Xian's face darkened. It seemed that he could only rely on himself to solve this matter. Yi Xian was about to act when Jian's eye suddenly said, "In front of the divine gate, break the soul with one finger." Yi Xian was stunned, then looked at the little demonic beast. "In front of the divine gate, break the soul with one finger." Hearing Yi Xian's words, the little demonic beast's face instantly changed. It retreated rapidly until it retreated to a corner. It stared at Yi Xian. The killing intent in its eyes was gone, only fear. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. "Miss Jian, it seems that you were not a good person in the past." Jian's eye did not say anything. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment his face suddenly changed. He looked up. There was a powerful aura. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "They're here." As Yi Xian's voice fell, a white-robed old man suddenly walked down from the 8th floor. This person was Gauze, who had gone to the Dugu clan previously. Gauze's gaze immediately fell on the little demonic beast in the corner. Seeing this little demonic beast, Gauze's eyes were filled with fear. After a moment of silence, Gauze took out a fruit the size of a fist. As soon as the fruit appeared, a fragrant aroma instantly filled the air. Not far away, the little demonic beast looked at the fruit with a trace of greed in its eyes. Gauze passed the fruit to the little demonic beast and smiled. "Senior, this is a small gift from my Gu clan. I hope that you will accept it." The little demonic beast glanced at Gauze, then grabbed the fruit with its claw. Seeing this scene, a trace of a smile appeared on Gauze's face. Then he turned to look at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, I'll give you a chance to live. I wonder if you'll take it." Yi Xian asked with a smile, "What way?" Gauze said, "Hand over that divine object and my Gu clan will let you and your mother live." Yi Xian thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No way. Because you will definitely not give us a chance to live." Gauze's eyes narrowed. "Looks like you're going to walk the path of death." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his right hand and a powerful force gathered in his palm. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched, then he clasped his hands together. "My invincible master, come and save me." Hearing Yi Xian's words, the little demonic beast's expression changed drastically. In the next moment, it directly pounced towards Gauze. "P.S. If I stop updating tomorrow, please forgive me." Chapter 409. Gauze's expression changed drastically when he saw the little demonic beast make its move. He retreated rapidly, but the little demonic beast was even faster. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of him. Gauze was horrified. At this crucial moment, he decisively abandoned his physical body and slapped his abdomen with his right hand. Boom! His physical body collapsed. His soul was about to escape. But at this moment, a sword ray suddenly slashed at his body. Soul-setting sword. With the previous incident with Dugu Feng, Yi Xian was already prepared. Thus, when the little demonic beast made its move, he was already prepared to act. This was to prevent Gauze from abandoning his physical body and using his soul to escape. As the sword entered his soul, Gauze's eyes widened in disbelief. He did not expect the little demonic beast to make a move, nor did he understand why it would do so. Even in death he did not understand. After Gauze's death, Yi Xian pulled out his sword and took out his netherworld ring to frantically absorb Gauze's soul. To him this was a great tonic. Although it could not increase his strength immediately, it would be of great use in the future, especially to his soul. The little demonic beast glanced at Yi Xian and retreated to the side. It was somewhat fearful of the current Yi Xian. To be more accurate, it was fearful of that woman. Jian's eye. That woman. It did not even want to think about her, let alone see her. Thus, when it saw Yi Xian calling for help, it decisively chose to act. Its purpose was to prevent Yi Xian from calling that woman over. And now it hoped that Yi Xian and the rest would leave quickly. In the distance, Yi Xian used the netherworld ring to absorb Gauze's soul. It had to be said that this feeling was very refreshing. It was extremely refreshing, as if his entire soul was floating. Yi Xian kept the netherworld ring, then turned to Dugu Xian and Dugu Xian. "You two stay here. I'll go out for a while." Yiling hurriedly hugged his arm. I'll go with you. Yixian shook his head. Be good. Stay here. Yiling shook his head vigorously. Yixian chuckled and said, when you become stronger then we can fight side by side, okay? Yiling lowered his head slightly. No one knew what he was thinking. Yixian gently rubbed Yiling's little head. Wait for me here. Also don't hate her, okay? Yiling suddenly looked up at Yixian. No. If it wasn't for her you wouldn't have suffered so much. I won't forgive her. As she spoke she began to cry. She would never forget the hardships her brother had suffered, and the reason why her brother had suffered so much was because that woman had left him. If that woman hadn't left, her brother wouldn't have suffered so much. She had hated that woman since she was young. She hated him for his brother. Hearing Yiling's words, Zhou Xian, who was not far away, felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. Yixian gently wiped away the tears on Yiling's face and said with a smile, then do you know that she left to save us? Yiling looked at Yixian. Yixian said softly, at the end of the day she doesn't owe us anything. On the contrary, in order to protect us she was imprisoned here for more than 10 years. We owe her. Do you understand? Hearing Yixian's words, Zhou Xian, who was not far away, burst into tears. In the distance Yixian said again, even your brother doesn't hate her. Don't hate her, okay? Yiling remained silent and did not speak. Yixian smiled. Wait for me here. Your brother will go kill some people. After saying that he turned and disappeared not far away. After Yixian left, Zhou Xian walked in front of Yiling. Yiling lowered his head and did not speak. Zhou Xian said softly, Mother understands that you hate Mother. Can you give Mother a chance? A chance to make up for it? Yiling still lowered his head and did not speak. Zhou Xian gently pulled on Yiling's arm. Yiling tried to pull away but Zhou Xian held on tightly. After Yiling failed to pull away once he gave up. Seeing this scene, Zhou Xian's face instantly revealed a smile. Not far away, the little demonic beast's expression was somewhat ugly. This Yixian did not even plan to leave with these two women. He was clearly using this place as a refuge. In fact, this was Yixian's plan. He could attack in retreat. After leaving the infernal purgatory, Yixian directly went to the Dugu family. He naturally would not let the Dugu family off. After all, Dugulian was not dead yet. As soon as Yixian left the infernal purgatory, he felt an aura locking onto him. Sensing this scene, Yixian's expression instantly changed. After all, he still had the chaotic energy hidden. The opponent could actually lock onto him. Yixian was about to turn around and return to the infernal purgatory, but at this time, a light net suddenly appeared in the sky above the infernal purgatory. Then the space around Yixian trembled violently. Countless layers of light rays stacked up and sealed the space around Yixian. He was discovered. Yixian's expression darkened. He took out the immortal spirit sword. At this time, a middle-aged man appeared not far away from him. The middle-aged man was dressed in a gray robe, holding a black folding fan in his hand. He only had one eye. The middle-aged man sized up Yixian and said with a smile, I guess you must be Yixian. Not bad, not bad. You are indeed a genius. Especially that concealment technique of yours. If not for this array, I would not have been able to discover you. Yixian looked at the middle-aged man. From the Gu family? The middle-aged man nodded. Yixian smiled. Is the Gu family going to stand up for the Dugu family? The middle-aged man smiled and waved his folding fan. Not at all. I came here for one thing and that is to kill. Yixian asked, not to snatch the treasure? The middle-aged man smiled. Kill first, then snatch the treasure. Yixian smiled. The next moment he directly took out the Space Dao Law. As the Space Dao Law appeared, his entire body instantly became illusory. The middle-aged man smiled. Trying to use space to escape? Dream on. As soon as he finished speaking, his right hand pressed down lightly. Boom. Below, at the entrance of the infernal purgatory, a figure was forced to a stop. It was Yixian. Yixian was forced to a stop on the spot by a powerful force. As soon as Yixian raised his head, a fist descended from the sky like a mountain. His target was him. It was so fast that he could not dodge it at all. Yixian suddenly pulled out his sword and stabbed upwards. Buzz. A sword cry suddenly resounded in the sky. Then a sword light directly slashed the fist. Boom. The entire sky shook violently. On the other hand, Yi Xian, who was on the ground, retreated rapidly. This time he retreated more than 1,000 feet. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, the middle-aged man appeared not far away in front of him. The middle-aged man walked slowly toward Yi Xian with a smile on his face. Not bad, not bad. You took a punch from me head-on and you only suffered a small injury. Not bad. As he spoke, he suddenly clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful fist intent appeared in the surroundings, causing the entire space to tremble. Below, Yi Xian's face changed. His right hand gripped the sword hilt tightly. 2 sword intents flowed into the scabbard like spring water. At the same time, a powerful aura suddenly spread out from his body. Invincible golden body. Facing the middle-aged man, he did not dare to underestimate him. He directly displayed the invincible golden body. In the sky, the middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian with a trace of surprise in his eyes. What kind of divine art is this? It's quite powerful. Yi Xian did not speak nonsense. He suddenly stomped his right foot. Boom. Yi Xian rose from the ground. In the sky, Yi Xian suddenly pulled out his sword and slashed. Buzz. A sword cry resounded in the sky. As the sword cry resounded, a sword light fiercely slashed down from the sky. As the sword fell, the space above the middle-aged man's head directly distorted. Below Yi Xian, the middle-aged man grinned. He really is a monstrous genius. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly smashed his fist upwards. Bang! The space in the surroundings trembled violently. Yi Xian's sword light was forcefully stopped by this force. At the same time, Yi Xian retreated repeatedly in midair. However, he'd only retreated a few steps before he stopped. After that, he charged forward swiftly and slashed his sword down once more. The middle-aged man raised his hand and smashed his fist forward. Everywhere his fist descended, space sunk down, and it was an extremely shocking sight. Bang! A world-shaking explosion resounded in the sky, and then the middle-aged man beneath Yi Xian retreated repeatedly by over 30 m. As soon as he stopped, the space behind him instantly collapsed. At the same time, a flying sword suddenly flew out from the space in front of him at an extremely swift speed. Void flash. The middle-aged man grinned when he saw this sword strike. Not bad. As soon as he finished speaking, he clamped his fingers together lightly. This caused the sword light before him to instantly vanish, and Yi Xian's sword was between his fingers. A wisp of a smile arose on the corners of the middle-aged man's mouth. No wonder even a Supreme Realm expert was unable to harm you. You really are extraordinary. As soon as he finished speaking, the sword between his fingers suddenly flew out and slashed directly at Yi Xian. It was swift. This sword strike was extremely swift, and it was even swifter than the attack Yi Xian had executed earlier. Yi Xian was shocked and he didn't dare act carelessly. He stretched his right hand forward and clenched it forcefully. This clench of his felt like he'd grabbed onto the sword, but the formidable force contained within it blasted him to the point he was blasted back repeatedly, and he moved 300 m back. After Yi Xian stopped moving, he glanced at his arm. At this moment, his entire arm had cracked apart, and fresh blood was seeping out incessantly from it. Yi Xian's heart shook. This person's strength is so terrifying. The middle-aged man walked slowly towards Yi Xian. No wonder the Dugu family stopped at nothing to kill you. You really have to die. If you don't die, I won't be able to rest at ease. As soon as he finished speaking, he pressed his right hand down lightly. In an instant, a destructive force suddenly swept down from the sky. At this moment, it seemed as if the sky was about to collapse, and it was extremely shocking. Below, the corners of Yi Xian's eyes twitched. A moment later, he turned around and fled into Avatar Purgatory. In midair, the middle-aged man was stunned. He ran. He ran just like that. In midair, the middle-aged man fell silent for a moment, and then he vanished on the spot. When he appeared again, he was already in Avatar Purgatory. However, he just entered Avatar Purgatory when a black-robed man suddenly appeared before him. A sword was floating above the black-robed man's palm. When he saw this sword, the middle-aged man's expression instantly changed, and his eyes were filled with seriousness and fear. In the distance, the black-robed man spoke softly, "Take another step forward and I'll obliterate your soul." The middle-aged man was speechless. "P.S. Please forgive me recently. Sorry. Truly sorry." Chapter 4:10. The middle-aged man stared fixedly at the black-robed man. After a moment he smiled slightly. I knew it. How could an arrogant person like Zhou Xian survive until now if there's no one behind him? He paused for a moment and said, May I know who you are? As he spoke, his right hand slowly clenched and a mysterious force quietly condensed. Opposite him, the black-robed man took a step forward. This step was very calm, very calm, and there were no fluctuations of aura. However, the middle-aged man's expression was extremely vigilant. Because he knew that many times, some experts had reached the level of returning to simplicity. Every word and action contained the grand Tao of heaven and earth. Although he didn't feel any aura of the grand Tao at this moment, he still didn't dare to be careless. The more ordinary one was, the more extraordinary it might be. At this moment, the sword in front of the black-robed man suddenly trembled slightly. Seeing this sword, the middle-aged man's expression changed and he couldn't help but take 2 steps back. With this retreat, his aura instantly weakened greatly. Noticing this scene, the middle-aged man's pupils constricted slightly, and he was greatly shocked. How could he be forced back by a sword? So he took another 2 steps forward. With this, his aura instantly strengthened greatly. The middle-aged man's heart relaxed slightly. When he looked at the sword again, his eyes were filled with deep fear. His heart of martial arts had almost been broken by a sword. In the distance, the black-robed man suddenly said, You're not bad to be able to stabilize your heart of martial arts after seeing this lord. The middle-aged man glanced at the black-robed man and slowly clenched his right hand. May I know your name? The black-robed man said, A name is just a code. So what if I know? So what if I don't know? Listen, go back and wait. In 5 days, this lord and this disappointing disciple of mine will personally come to the Gu family. At that time, us master and disciple will put an end to the Gu family. Hearing this, the middle-aged man's eyes narrowed slightly. You want to go to my Gu family? The black-robed man said, No. The middle-aged man was silent for a moment and then said, In 5 days I, Gu Jian, will be waiting for your arrival at the Gu family. With that he turned and left. After Gu Jian left, the black-robed man turned and ran. This black-robed man was naturally Zhou Xian. In the second level of the infernal purgatory, Zhou Xian's expression was extremely grave. This was because he realized that there was still a huge gap between him and the man called Gu Mo. Unless he used the God set, he wouldn't be a match for his opponent. Even if he used the God Legion set, he wasn't completely confident that he could kill his opponent. If he couldn't kill his opponent, he would die for sure. Most importantly, he could not leave with Yi Ling and Zhou Xian, as there were too many people who had designs on him. Dragging it on like this wasn't a solution either. Power. Zhou Xian's face darkened. At this moment he still felt that his strength was severely lacking. Right now, even if he were to face the Supreme Being, he would not be afraid at all. However, this ancient scythe was clearly above the Supreme Realm. The difference in their realms was too great. Even with godly equipment, it was impossible to make up for it. Breakthrough. Zhou Xian sat down and thought, Miss Jian, if I want to reach the origin realm. Jian Zizai suddenly said, Don't ask me, my realm is too low, I don't understand. Zhou Xian's face darkened. Miss Jian, didn't you also come up step by step? Jian Zizai said, I became a god in 1 step unlike you. Zhou Xian was stunned, then curled his lips. Became a god in 1 step? Who are you fooling? Jian Zizai said softly, The Tao seems very close, but it's not that close. For some people, the distance between them and the Tao was extremely far. However, for others, the distance between them and the Tao was only a single step. There are many such people in the world. Zhou Xian thought for a moment, then said in a deep voice, Miss Jian, then tell me, is it better to become a god step by step or to become a god in 1 step? Jian Zizai was silent for a moment, then said, Is there any point in asking these questions? In short, you just need to understand one thing, and that is that you are currently very weak, understand? Zhou Xian was speechless. A moment later, Zhou Xian spread out his right hand and gently clenched it. In an instant the space trembled slightly, sensing origin energy. An hour later, Zhou Xian was overjoyed because he felt a mysterious energy. He hurriedly used spatial force to condense it, and very soon, a black dot the size of a grain of rice appeared in his palm. Zhou Xian was struck dumb at the sight of this black dot. Isn't the origin chi purple? After a moment of silence, he did not think too much about it and continued to condense it. Gradually, the black dot in his palm grew larger and larger. By now it was already the size of a thumb, and this black dot contained a power. Xian's expression was somewhat solemn because he felt that there was something wrong with this power, but he did not know what was wrong. Xian said in a deep voice, "Miss Jian, is there something wrong?" Jian Zizai said, "There's nothing wrong, continue." Xian nodded slightly and continued to condense it. Very soon, a black vortex appeared in his palm. As the black vortex appeared, the surrounding space suddenly trembled. At the same time, the space in front of him began to become illusory. Xian's expression changed. "Miss Jian, what's going on?" Jian Zizai was silent for a moment, then said, "Spiritual qi." Xian hurriedly asked, "What is spiritual qi?" Jian Zizai said, "It's the spiritual qi that is emitted after a person dies. No one knows how many people have died here, and endless spiritual qi has gathered here. It is the most corrosive type of spiritual qi in this world besides the death qi." Xian retreated again and again because the space in front of him began to disappear bit by bit. It was extremely terrifying. Jian Zizai said again, "Control them." Xian hurriedly asked, "How do I control them?" Jian Zizai said, "Control them how you condense them." Xian tried his best to calm himself down. He raised his right hand slightly and began to slowly clench it. Gradually, the spiritual qi in front of him began to slowly shrink until it disappeared. Seeing the spiritual qi disappear, Xian immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. "Miss Jian, this spiritual qi is really terrifying." Jian Zizai said, "Above the origin realm is the supreme realm, but very few people know that there is a hidden realm between the origin realm and the supreme realm, which is the spiritual qi realm. Source qi is yang, yin energy is yin energy. Now that you've gained control of this yin energy, it's actually a good thing for you." Xian hurriedly asked, "Which is stronger, spiritual qi or source qi?" Jian Zizai said, "Guess." Jian Zizai said, "The yin spiritual energy is extremely corrosive. Can even corrode the origin of space. If you can control it well, even without the invincible golden body or the God Legion set, you can still kill a peerless realm expert. Most importantly, after you have mastered spiritual qi, if you can control source qi and combine the two, there will be a surprise." Xian nodded, "Thank you for your guidance, Miss Jian." Jian Zizai said, "There is a lot of yin spiritual qi in the infernal purgatory. You can condense it into yin spiritual qi swords, and then use these yin spiritual qi swords as flying swords against enemies in the future. Yin spiritual qi is qi, and it is very different from ordinary flying swords. It will have a miraculous effect." Xian nodded slightly, understood. As he spoke, he began to slowly condense the spiritual qi. Soon a sword appeared in front of him, a pitch-black sword. Yang swordati. The whole sword was 3 feet long without a hilt. It was completely black and exuded an extremely cold aura. Xian's expression was solemn because this sword's scar was dangerous. He did not dare to touch it unless he used the invincible golden body. Otherwise, even if his body had been tempered by the dragon blood, it would not be able to withstand the corrosion of the spiritual qi. Xian carefully put the spiritual qi sword into the world prison pagoda. As soon as he entered the world prison pagoda, Xiao Linger flew over. However, when she saw the sword, her expression changed drastically. The next moment she suddenly punched. Boom! The sword was directly blown away. Xiao Linger wanted to attack again, but Xian hurriedly stopped her. "Xiao Linger, what are you doing?" Xiao Linger glanced at the sword with a cold expression. "Evil aura." Xian smiled bitterly, then said, "I am used to fight bad people. To fight bad people you need to use evil things, understand?" Xiao Linger did not speak. She still stared at the sword with an unfriendly expression. Xian shook his head and smiled. After a while, under his constant persuasion, Xiao Linger expressed that she was willing to temporarily let go of the sword. Looking at Xiao Linger not far away, Xian said in a deep voice, "Miss Jian, she seems to have become stronger again." Jian Zizai said, "She has the body of origin, so it is natural for her to improve quickly." Xian nodded slightly. "You can't tell her that she is very good at fighting." He found that Xiao Linger's strength was really terrifying. If she knew that she was very good at fighting, this little guy would probably be lawless. After a while, Xian left the prison pagoda and went to the 3rd level of infernal purgatory, where he continued to condense Yin's spiritual qi swords. 4 days later. The Gu family. As the head of the three great families in the heavenly domain, the Gu family's strength was naturally unquestionable, and the Gu family's foundation could be said to be the thickest among the three great families. On this day all the experts of the Gu family returned. Gu Sickle stood in the air above the Gu family's mansion, his hands behind his back, standing quietly. The surroundings were very quiet, but all the experts of the Gu family were in the dark. On this day the whole Gu family was waiting for Xian. To be precise, waiting for the mysterious black-robed man. They waited and waited from morning to noon and from noon to night, but Xian and the mysterious black-robed man still did not appear. At night, an old man suddenly appeared beside Gu Sickle. Will they come? Gu Sickle's expression was calm. Wait. The old man nodded slightly and retreated. Soon from night to dawn, there was still no trace of Xian and the black-robed man. In the air, Gu Sickle's face was extremely gloomy. Infernal purgatory. Aren't you going to the Gu family? Did I say I'm going? You did. Oh. I won't go for now. Why? I can't beat them. I'll go when I can beat them. Jian Zizai. P.S. This is the first time I've experienced the departure of a loved one. In life, really, loved ones are the most important. I've been very busy these 2 days. I've been writing a little during the night watch, but I feel like I can't keep it up anymore. If I stop updating, please forgive me. Chapter 4:11. Above the Gu residence, Gu Scythe clenched his right hand tightly, his expression cold. He knew that he might have been fooled. But how could such an expert go back on his word? An old man appeared beside Gu Scythe. The old man looked at the horizon and frowned. Is that person really that strong? Gu Scythe said softly, a sword almost broke my martial heart. What do you think? The old man said in a low voice, such an expert should not go back on his word. Gu Scythe shook his head. No matter what, this person is not ordinary. Our Gu family cannot underestimate him. The old man said, naturally I have checked on Xian's background. The treasure should be on him. Apart from that, there seems to be a mysterious expert behind him. He has been in danger several times, but he has survived it silently. But we have no idea who he is or where he came from. Gu Scythe said indifferently, no matter who he is, our Gu family must get that treasure. If we can get it, our Gu family will be able to surpass the North and South martial sects, and even the Weiyang Star Palace. The old man said in a low voice, but if we really get it, I'm afraid it will be a disaster. Gu Scythe said, let's take a gamble. The old man nodded as if thinking of something. He said, as far as I know, Xian and the Yun family have a grudge. Gu Scythe said, contact the Yun family and maintain the formation at the infernal hell. Don't let this person out. The old man nodded. There has always been someone maintaining the formation, but the demonic beast on the 9th floor. Hearing this, Gu Scythe's expression suddenly became serious. The Gu family was also quite afraid of the infernal hell. Gu Scythe was silent for a moment, then said, I will think of a way to deal with it. With that he turned and disappeared into the horizon. Dugu family. Because of Xian, there were only a few people left in the Dugu family. It could be said that the current Dugu family was no longer qualified to be on the same level as the Yan family and Gu family. Within a large hall, Dugu Lian, who was still in his soul form, sat quietly, his expression somewhat malevolent. Because of Xian, the Dugu family's strength had been greatly reduced. Some of the surrounding forces had already begun to slowly nibble away at the Dugu family's surrounding industries. As for the Dugu family, they had no power to resist, nor did they dare to resist. At this moment Dugu Ming walked into the hall. Seeing Dugu Ming, Dugu hurriedly stood up. Is he dead? Dugu Ming shook his head. Dugu Lian sat down. Even the Gu family can't kill him. Dugu Ming glanced at Dugu Lian. We have to leave the heaven region. Leave the heaven domain. Dugu Lian narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Dugu Ming said in a low voice. Now that our Dugu family has lost its power, if we continue to stay here, only death awaits us. If we bring our people away now, we still have a chance to make a comeback. Dugu Lian said in a somewhat sinister voice. Are we just going to let the people of my Dugu family die? Dugu Ming sighed softly. If this goes on, more people will die in the family. Dugu Lian clenched his fists tightly. Xian must die. Dugu Ming glanced at Dugu Lian, then quietly retreated. Outside the hall, Du Ming looked at the horizon and said softly, "There's no hope." With that he immediately left. Leave the Dugu family. In the end he still chose to leave the Dugu family because he could not see any hope. In the hall, Dugu Lian was silent for a moment, then he came to the Dugu family's ancestral hall. In the center of the ancestral hall, there was a statue of a middle-aged man. Dugu Lian was silent for a long time, then he slowly knelt down. Ancestor, the Dugu family has suddenly encountered a great change. This unfilial son respectfully requests the ancestor's soul to appear. After a moment the statue's hand suddenly moved. Endless Purgatory, 9th floor. Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him, Yin's spiritual chi sword was condensing. Behind him Ling quietly leaned against him, while Xian sat at the side looking at the two siblings. As for the little demon beast, it stared at Xian. It really wanted to slap Xian to death, but it did not dare to do so. After about an hour the space in front of Xian trembled slightly, following which Yin's spiritual chi sword condensed. Now he had condensed 7 Yin's spiritual chi swords. Each of the Yin's spiritual energy swords was equivalent to a supreme grade saint weapon. Most importantly, these swords could not be touched. Even supreme beings would be corroded if they touched them. Moreover, this sword was gaseous, extremely light, and used as a flying sword its speed would be very fast. Xian hurriedly put the sword into the world prison pagoda. He did not dare to let the sword stay outside for too long, because he still could not completely control this Yin's spiritual chi sword. Inside the world prison pagoda, Xiaolinger stood in front of the 8 Yin spiritual chi swords, staring coldly at the 8 swords. "You guys be careful, I'm very good at fighting, you know?" As she spoke she raised her little fist. Xian, seeing Xian, Xiaolinger blinked, then turned her head to continue watering her spirit fruit. But from time to time she would look coldly at the 9 swords, and those swords clearly did not dare to provoke her. Xian shook his head and smiled. He looked at the 9 Yin spiritual chi swords. With these 9 flying swords, it was equivalent to having another trump card. At this time Xian walked over. She glanced at Xian and softly said, "What do you plan to do next?" Xian grabbed the hand of the sleeping Ling. "Protect you guys." Xian suddenly sat in front of Xian. She looked at Xian and softly said, "Are you willing to call me mother?" Xian's hand trembled slightly. He was silent for a moment and then said, "Give me some time." Some things in the end were difficult to let go of in a short time. Hearing Xian's words, Xian hurriedly said, Okay. Her face was full of smiles and there were tears. Xian softly said, "My sister and I grew up in the Yi family, but we know nothing about father, about him." Xian fell silent. Xian said, "You can't say." Xian shook her head. "Mother will tell you about this in the future, okay?" Xian nodded, and as he spoke he placed Ling in Xian's arms, and then walked in front of the little demon beast not far away. The little demon beast looked at Xian, its expression calm. It was impossible to tell whether it was happy or angry. Xian thought for a moment and then said, "There are many people who want to kill me, they are all very strong." The little demon beast quietly looked at Xian. Xian said, "From the first time I saw Senior, I knew that Senior is a demon with a very righteous heart. Regarding this kind of thing, Senior will definitely not sit by and do nothing, right?" The little demon beast looked straight at Xian and its tone was very firm. "I will." As it spoke it emphasized again, "I really will." Xian's face darkened. This guy is not into the role. The little demon beast walked in front of Xian, and it looked straight at Xian. "She is not here, is she?" This "she" was naturally referring to Jian Zizai. Xian nodded. "She is not." The little demon beast stared at Xian and after a moment it said, "Human, leave this place." As it spoke it turned to leave, but at this moment Xian hurriedly said, Wait. The little demon beast looked at Xian, and Xian thought for a moment and then said, "Don't you want to go out?" There was a hint of ridicule in the little demon beast's eyes. "Can you do it?" Xian said, "I can't do it, but my master can." Jian Zizai. The little demon beast narrowed its eyes and it just looked at Xian. After a long time it shook its head. "If she sees me she will only kill me." Xian said, "With me here she won't." The little demon beast sneered, "How can you guarantee that?" Xian said seriously, "I am her only disciple and she likes me the most. She will usually listen to my words." The little demon beast looked at Xian. I really don't understand, you don't even have a god root and your physique is so ordinary, why would she like you? Yi Xian, huh? Suddenly Jian's eyes loud laughter came from the prison pagoda. This god race gatekeeper can speak, I will spare it. Yi Xian. At this moment the little demon beast suddenly said, I can't go out, but if they enter the 9th floor I can protect them. Hearing this, Yi Xian was overjoyed, and just as he was about to speak the little demon beast said, but there is a condition. Yi Xian said seriously, speak. The little demon beast hesitated for a moment and then said, if she comes, tell her not to hit me. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. This guy is actually so afraid of Jianzizai. It seems that what Jianzizai did in the god race was not as simple as the old man above said. Not only that, but this woman was not simple. Although she was usually very gentle and not very angry, Yi Xian knew that this kind of person was the most terrifying because once she was angry it could destroy the world. It was better not to provoke her in the future. With the little demon beast's promise, Yi Xian was slightly relieved. At the very least, as long as Yi Ling and Zhou Xian did not go out, there would be no problem for the time being. Yi Xian walked to the side and sat down cross-legged, then he took out the earth god's seal and said in a low voice, Miss Jian, how can I refine this thing? Jianzizai said, drip a drop of blood. Yi Xian was slightly doubtful. Is that simple? Yes. Are you sure? I'm sure. You won't lie to me? I won't lie. Yi Xian was speechless. He hesitated. Yi Xian didn't drip a drop of blood directly because Jianzizai's words were truly quite unreliable. Unfortunately, the god on the 2nd floor refused to answer him. Yi Xian hesitated for a long time. In the end, he dripped a drop of his blood essence onto the earth god's seal. In an instant, a strand of dazzling white light erupted from the earth god's seal, and then it flew directly into the space between Yi Xian's brows. Bang! A powerful aura suddenly swept out from within Yi Xian. At the same time, an illusory figure appeared in front of Yi Xian. In next to no time, the figure condensed into a middle-aged man who wore a dragon robe and a dragon crown. The Divine Emperor. The Divine Emperor gazed at Yi Xian and his voice resounded like a bell. What is the Earth God's seal? Yi Xian's mind shook and then he shook his head. I don't know. The Divine Emperor asked again. What is the living beings of the world? Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he shook his head. I don't know. The Divine Emperor continued. What is the living beings of the world? Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he shook his head again. I don't know. The Divine Emperor fell silent for a moment and then he said, it's very difficult for me to do this. You should at least know how to be Dao Yi. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. I was busy until 1:30. I'm very tired. I want to rest. Chapter 4:12. Yi Xian laughed bitterly when he heard the Divine Emperor. If I know, then I know. If I don't know, then I don't know. How can I lie? The Divine Emperor nodded slightly. That's true. As he spoke, he sized up Yi Xian and smiled. Actually, you're not suitable to inherit my inheritance. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Senior, how about this? If I meet a suitable person in the future, then I can pass down this seal and everything I've learned to him. What do you think? The Divine Emperor was slightly stunned and then he asked, Really? Yi Xian nodded. The Divine Emperor thought for a moment and then he smiled. Right, the person who passed down the sword technique to you is unfathomable. My inheritance and martial techniques can only be considered as a transitional item to you. Yi Xian shook his head. Senior, I've benefited greatly from your martial techniques as well. Regardless of whether it's the sword Dao or the martial Dao, we can learn from each other. The Divine Emperor smiled. That's true. Remember, you're unable to fully control it with your current strength. Try not to utilize it if you can. Yi Xian nodded. All right. The Divine Emperor raised his right hand slowly. Let me lend you a hand. As soon as he finished speaking, he pressed his right hand down lightly towards Yi Xian, and a powerful strand of golden energy instantly surged towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian's body trembled violently, and it wasn't long before countless mountains and rivers appeared within his mind. Just like that, Yi Xian gradually calmed down after around 2 hours, and the image of the Divine Emperor had vanished as well. Yi Xian opened his palm and a golden seal appeared out of thin air. As he gazed at the seal, Yi Xian spoke with slight excitement. Earth God's seal. The nearby little demon beast glanced at the Earth God's seal in Yi Xian's hand, and its eyes were filled with disdain. It's just an ordinary treasure, and it's one of the lowest treasures in my god clan. Xian kept the earth god's seal and walked in front of the little demonic beast. Is the god race very impressive? The little monster beast's face was filled with undisguised arrogance. My god race's might shakes the heavens. Who dares not to obey? Xian said calmly. What about now? The little monster beast glared at Xian. If it wasn't for her. When it spoke up to hear, it seemed to have thought of something and didn't dare to continue speaking. Xian said, it's your god race that doesn't want her. Who can you blame? The little demon beast was silent for a moment, then said softly, it was the patriarch who didn't want her. What does that have to do with me? Why did she hit me? There was a tinge of grievance in his tone. Xian asked, do you hate her? The little demon beast lowered its head slightly. After a moment it shook its head. The divine race is gone. As it spoke it retreated to the corner. The little demon beast pointed at Xian with its little claws. Your skin is thicker than the scales of the Black Tortoise clan. Xian was expressionless. Tell me, does your god race have a treasure of this level? The little demon beast was silent for a moment, then said, my god race once shook the heavens and ruled over thousands of star fields. Xian hurriedly said, stop. Don't talk about the glory of the past. Just tell me, does your god race have such a divine item? The little demon beast's eyes twitched, but it didn't speak. Xian said indifferently, you come from the noble god race, you can't be a sore loser, right? The little demon beast was furious. It pointed its claws between its eyebrows and in an instant, a drop of blood flew in front of Xian. Seeing this, Xian hurriedly put away the drop of blood. As if thinking of something, he looked at the little demon beast. How does your blood compare to the blood of the dragon race? The little demon beast coldly looked at Xian, but it didn't speak. Xian shrugged, then retreated to the side and asked in his heart, Miss Jian, after I swallow this blood, can it strengthen my body? Jian Zizai said, won't you know if you try? Xian thought for a moment, then directly swallowed the drop of blood. As soon as the blood entered his stomach, a powerful force suddenly spread out from his body. In an instant he felt as if his internal organs were on fire. It wasn't a feeling, it was already burning. Not far away the little demon beast was a little dumbfounded. Inside the prison pagoda, Jian Zizai whispered, this silly child. Xian. At the side, Zhou Xian was burning with anxiety. In the end, she looked at the little demon beast not far away and the latter said calmly, my blood is of extreme yang. If he can withstand it, he will naturally gain a lot, but if he can't. At this point its expression suddenly changed. If she thinks that I killed him, he can't die. As it spoke, it instantly appeared in front of the burning Xian, then pressed its claws on Xian's shoulder. In an instant, a powerful force directly shook off the flames around Xian's body. At the same time, a mysterious force continuously flowed into Xian's body, and began to protect Xian's internal organs, meridians and bones. After an unknown amount of time, Xian's body gradually returned to normal. The little demon beast let out a sigh of relief, then retreated to the side. Zhou Xian hurriedly went to hug Xian, but the little demon beast suddenly said, don't touch him, his body is currently undergoing changes. Zhou Xian stopped and looked at Xian on the ground, tears flowing uncontrollably from her eyes. At this moment the little demon beast suddenly looked up not far away, and there a middle-aged man walked in. This person was Gu Yao of the Gu family. Behind Gu Yao, there were two old men in white robes, both holding long white staffs in their hands. Their feet were about a foot off the ground as if they were floating. Seeing the three of them, Zhou Xian hurriedly protected Xian and Yi Ling behind her. The little demon beast looked at Gu Yao and the other two expressionlessly. Gu Yao glanced at Xian lying on the ground, then finally looked at the little demon beast. The Gu family has no intention of becoming enemies with you, sir. I wonder if you can stay out of this matter? The little demon beast crouched in the corner, not saying a word. Gu Yao was silent for a moment, then he waved his right hand, and two purple fruits floated in front of the little demon beast. This is a small token of my appreciation, sir. I hope you will kindly accept it. The little demon beast glanced at the two fruits and was about to take them, when suddenly, a little fellow appeared in front of it. Xiaoling, Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they saw little Ling. Xiao Linger grabbed the 2 purple fruits, then turned around and ran back into the prison pagoda. The little demon beast was dumbfounded. Gu Yao, who was not far away, was also confused. What was that thing? At this moment, an old man in white robes behind him suddenly said, "The spirit of the origin. The spirit of the origin." Hearing this, greed flashed in Gu Yao's eyes, but he quickly hid it. He looked at the little demon beast, and the little demon beast said indifferently, "I don't know her." The corner of Gu Yao's mouth twitched. He hesitated for a moment, then bent his finger, and the 2 purple fruits floated in front of the little demon beast. At this moment Xiao Ling appeared again. Her speed was very fast and she directly picked up the 2 fruits and disappeared. The little demon beast was speechless. Gu Yao suddenly disappeared and went straight for Yi Xian. The moment Gu Yao disappeared, the little demon beast also disappeared. Bang! With a loud explosion, Gu Yao returned to his original place. Gu Yao looked at the little demon beast. What is the meaning of this? The little demon beast glanced at Gu Yao coldly. Get lost. Gu Yao smiled slightly. You two make your move. As soon as Gu Yao's voice fell, the 2 old men in white robes behind him suddenly disappeared, and when they reappeared, they were already in front of the little demon beast. The little demon beast's expression instantly became fierce, and in the next moment, it slapped in front of it. Boom! A powerful pressure appeared out of thin air, and the 2 old men were forced to stop, but the next moment, a beam of light directly enveloped the little demon beast. The little demon beast slammed forward, and the beam of light trembled violently, instantly cracking but did not shatter. One of the old men in white robes turned to look at Gu Yao. Hurry, at most half a quarter of an hour. Gu Yao nodded and then directly disappeared, and when he reappeared he was already in front of Yi Xian. At this moment, Zhou Xian was in front of Yi Xian, and just as she was about to make a move, Gu Yao directly grabbed her throat. However, Zhou Xian suddenly disappeared into thin air, and Gu Yao suddenly turned around and slapped down. Boom! Zhou Xian repeatedly retreated, and Gu Yao did not care about Zhou Xian but grabbed Yi Xian on the ground. At this time Yi Ling suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and she glared at Gu Yao. Don't even think about hurting my brother. As she said that, she waved her right hand and a cold air directly rushed to Gu Yao. Gu Yao said angrily, "Get lost." As he said that, he waved his right hand and the cold air directly collapsed. At this moment, not far away, the beam of light that trapped the little demon beast suddenly collapsed. The 2 old men were shocked and directly turned to run. And Gu Yao's face also changed. In a hurry he grabbed Yi Ling in front of him, turned around and directly disappeared. Seeing that Yi Ling had been caught, Zhou Xian's face changed and she hurriedly chased out, but Gu Yao and the other 2 had already disappeared without a trace. Zhou Xian was about to chase after them. At this time a hand pulled her. She turned her head and saw that it was Yi Xian. Yi Xian whispered, "I'll go." Zhou Xian hurriedly pulled Yi Xian's hand. Don't go to the Gu family. The Gu family's foundation is very deep and there are many strong people. Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand and his face was a little twisted. Touch me I can, but touch my sister, even if he is a god, I will still kill him. Chapter 413. Watching Yi Xian leave, Zhou Xian felt a sudden pain in her heart. She knew that the 2 of them had suffered a lot over the years. As a parent, the biggest pain was not being able to help their children. Yi Xian left the infinite purgatory. As soon as he showed up outside, a giant light formation locked him in place. Yi Xian stomped on the ground with his right foot, and a sword light shot up from the ground. Boom! That light array shattered instantly. At that moment an elder appeared in front of Yi Xian. Before he could say anything, Ain's spiritual sword flew out from the sword box on Yi Xian's back. Zoosh! The elder opened his mouth and his head flew off. Blood gushed out like a fountain. As Yi Xian was about to leave, a black shadow flashed in the distance. Yi Xian pulled out his sword and slashed. Life or death was decided by the sword. As the sword slashed down, the sound of the sword soared into the sky, tearing the sky apart. Boom! The whole sky shook violently and then a figure retreated. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian retreated for hundreds of meters. As soon as he stopped, the space under his feet cracked, and the cracks spread out at an extremely fast speed. Yi Xian raised his head and saw a man standing not far away. The man was in his 20s wearing a long robe. He held a long spear in his right hand which was 9 feet long. It was entirely red and there was a red tassel on the tip. The man glanced at Yi Xian and his lips curled into a mocking smile. Sword genius. Just as a... As he spoke he walked towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I am the prince of the Gu family, Gu Ping. Today I will... Right then Yi Xian, who was not far away, suddenly disappeared. In the sky, a sword light flashed like a shooting star. The moment Yi Xian disappeared, Gu Ping's face changed drastically. That sword was so fast. At that moment, Gu Ping stopped underestimating Yi Xian. He gripped his spear tightly and stomped on the ground. Boom! The entire space shook violently. Immediately after, countless flames swept out from the long spear in his hand. In an instant, a sea of fire appeared in front of him. At the same time he raised his spear and stabbed forward. This stab was like an angry dragon emerging from the sea, capable of piercing through everything. The sword arrived. The sea of fire was instantly torn apart. The spear and the sword met in the most brutal way. Boom! The entire sky shook violently as a human silhouette backed out continuously. It was Gu Ping. Just as Gu Ping was about to retreat, a black sword light flashed past. Yang Swordati. In the distance, Gu Ping's pupils shrunk as he threw out a spear attack. Wherever the tip of the spear passed, the space was torn apart. The sword arrived. The long spear was instantly corroded, and the sword pierced through Gu Ping's throat, causing blood to spurt out. Behind Gu Ping, Yi Xian gently pointed with his finger, and the Yin-Chi sword was sucked into the world prison tower. Gu Ping stared straight ahead. Your sword. At this point Yi Xian suddenly turned around and slashed horizontally with his sword. Gu Ping's head was chopped off. Yi Xian stabbed out with his sword and the sword pierced through Gu Ping's head. In the next second he disappeared into the vast space. As soon as Yi Xian left, a middle-aged man in a white robe appeared in the field. Behind the middle-aged man stood an old man. The middle-aged man looked at the direction Yi Xian had left in, not saying anything. The elder was a little confused. Why didn't you do anything? The middle-aged man shook his head. This person is not normal. The elder said in a low voice. He is heading towards the Gu family. He is walking right into a trap. If we don't do anything now, the Gu family will have it easy. The middle-aged man said lightly. Why would he dare to go to the Gu family? The elder frowned slightly. You mean he has something to rely on? The middle-aged man nodded. This person has such a powerful treasure and yet he is still alive. This is already very unusual. Plus he was in the 9th level of the Endless Purgatory. That little beast had killed many powerful warriors from the Gu family and the Dugu family, but he is still alive. Do you think this is normal? The elder remained silent. The middle-aged man said softly, the reason why the Nanwu Martial School did not do anything is probably because they want to continue watching. As he spoke he closed his eyes slowly. Although the treasure is good, it is also a hot potato. Getting it now would be like inviting trouble to ourselves. The elder said in a low voice. Leader, although this treasure is hot, it could also be a chance for the Beiwu Martial School. A chance to surpass the Nanwu Martial School, the Sacred Land, and even the Weiyang Star Palace. The middle-aged man smiled. Did you see what happened to the Dugu family? The elder wanted to say something, but the middle-aged man waved his hand lightly. Let's go to the Gu family and see how this young man is going to deal with them. The 3 saints of the Gu family are not so simple. As he finished, he disappeared into the distant space. The elder hurried to follow him. After an hour, Yi Xian arrived at the Gu family's subsidiary city, Gu City. In front of the city gate, Yi Xian walked slowly. He carried the sword case on his back, his left hand holding the sword and his right hand holding a bloody head. This head was the head of the Gu family's prince, Gu Ping. As Yi Xian walked to the bottom of the city wall, an elder suddenly appeared in front of him. The elder was about to speak when a sword suddenly flew out of the sword case on Yi Xian's back. Swoosh! The elder's head flew out and blood splattered everywhere. Very quickly, powerful auras flew out of the city. Soon more than 30 powerful cultivators appeared in front of Yi Xian. The 30 people were about to attack when a voice suddenly came from the city. Stand down. As the voice came, a middle-aged man walked out. It was Gu Sickle. Gu Sickle walked not far from Yi Xian and smiled. I knew you would come. You. At that moment Xian suddenly disappeared. Gu Sickle squinted his eyes, clenched his right hand and threw a punch. Boom. The moment the punch was thrown, Xian's sword stopped a few feet away from him. The space around them twisted. Gu Sickle's right hand suddenly twisted. Boom. Xian, together with his sword, retreated hundreds of feet in an instant. The fairy spirit sword in Xian's hand already had cracks. Gu Sickle looked at Xian. I have to say you are indeed a monster. Unfortunately, it is far from enough. As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward. The space around Xian shook violently. At the same time, a shadow flashed across the field. Fast. It was so fast that the naked eye could not see it. Even if Xian had the sword eye, he could not see the opponent's speed. He had to give it his all. Boom. A powerful aura suddenly swept out of Xian's body. The moment this aura appeared, the space around him suddenly rippled like water. The gods set. Facing a powerful cultivator like Gu Sickle, Xian directly used the god's set. The god's set. Gu Sickle glanced at the god's set that Xian was wearing, and his expression was quite solemn. This treasure of yours. As he said this, his pupils suddenly shrank and then he punched forward, because a sword light was already in front of him. Boom. The sword light shattered. However, the ancient scythe was forced to retreat several hundred feet. Gu Sickle glanced at his right hand. At the moment there was a deep sword mark on his right fist. Gu Sickle looked up at Xian, his eyes flashing coldly. This time he did not talk nonsense. He took a step forward and slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful force condensed in the palm of his hand. In the distance, Xian slowly held the sword in his right hand. A sword momentum quietly condensed, and at the same time, two kinds of sword essences constantly gathered in the sword in his hand. After a moment of silence, the two suddenly disappeared at the same time. Xian drew his sword and slashed. Gu Sickle punched out. Boom. In front of the city gate, an explosion resounded like a clap of thunder, and then the walls of the ancient city collapsed. Not only that, but the ground and the surroundings even cracked in an instant. Xian and Gu Sickle had already returned to their original positions. Around them, the space trembled violently as if it would collapse at any time. It was extremely frightening. Gu Sickle stared at Xian. He slowly raised his right hand and opened his palm. Around him, countless origin power gathered toward his palm. Gradually, these origin power converged into a long spear in the palm of his hand. The next moment he gently stomped his right foot. Swoosh. Gu Sickle directly turned into a shadow and disappeared. In the distance, Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. This sword slashed down directly on the tip of the spear and the two powerful forces converged. Boom. An ear-piercing sound suddenly rang out. Then the two men retreated rapidly. In the process of Xian's retreat, a flying sword suddenly flew out from the sword case behind him. When it appeared again, it was already in front of Gu Sickle. This sword appeared extremely abruptly and Gu Sickle could not avoid it. He pressed his right hand forward and directly blocked the sword with his palm. However, when his right palm had just touched the sword, his face instantly changed. Then his left hand turned into a palm and slashed at his right wrist. Half of Gu Sickle's right arm flew out directly, and the half arm that flew out had turned into a pool of black blood. Gu Sickle looked at Xian in the distance, a trace of disbelief in his eyes. Yin spiritual qi. You can actually condense such yin spiritual qi into a sword. At this moment, behind Xian, a few more swords suddenly flew out. The speed was extremely fast. Seeing this scene, Gu Sickle's face changed greatly and he retreated rapidly. This retreat directly into the city, and wherever the yin spiritual qi swords passed, the space was directly corroded. It was extremely frightening. Finally, after retreating more than 1,000 feet, a golden beam suddenly flashed from the side, extremely fast and instantly blasted on the yin spiritual qi swords of Xian. Boom boom boom. The three yin spiritual qi swords were forced to a halt. Xian turned his head to look and not far to his right two old men appeared, and the two old men's aura was not weaker than Gu Sickle's. One of the old men stared at Xian and was about to speak, but at this moment Xian suddenly shook his head. Don't say anything. Let's fight to the death. Either I kill you or you kill me. As his voice fell, his palm suddenly opened and a dragon whisker quietly flew out. Soon this dragon whisker disappeared into the vast sky. P.S. I may not update tomorrow. Sorry. Chapter 4:14. Gu Mo and the other two glanced at the dragon whisker floating in the sky, then exchanged glances with each other, their eyes flickering with killing intent. They knew that Yi Xian had called for reinforcements. They didn't know what reinforcements Yi Xian had called, but they knew that they had to kill Yi Xian as soon as possible. Gu Mo suddenly said, "His god set is extraordinary, be careful." The two old men nodded slightly, and in the next moment they suddenly disappeared. Their speed was so fast that Yi Xian couldn't sense them at all. He could only rely on his instinct to sense danger to attack. Therefore, the moment the two of them disappeared, he suddenly pulled out his sword. Slash. Buzz. A loud and clear sword cry resounded through the sky. When Yi Xian's sword fell, he immediately felt as if his sword had slashed on dark steel, and his entire arm went numb. Not only that, but a powerful force transmitted through the sword to his arm. Bang. As if he had suffered a heavy blow, Yi Xian instantly retreated hundreds of meters. After stopping, Yi Xian felt as if his internal organs were about to explode, and it was very uncomfortable. Moreover, this was under the circumstances that he was wearing the god set. If he hadn't worn this set of god set, he would have been smashed into pieces just now. Yi Xian raised his head to look not far away, and in the distance the two old men suddenly disappeared. Yi Xian's expression changed and he didn't dare to hold back anymore. He immediately flipped his palm and a golden seal appeared in his palm. The Earth God Seal. The moment the Earth God Seal appeared, the scene in the battlefield instantly changed. Mountains appeared out of thin air, and these mountains floated in the starry sky. Between each mountain white mist drifted, and it was like a paradise. When this scene appeared, the two old men's expressions changed, and they suddenly clapped their hands in front of them. Boom. The heavens and earth shook violently. Obviously, the two of them wanted to break this Earth God Seal. Unfortunately, the moment the two of them attacked, the countless mountains suddenly condensed into a giant golden hand, and in the next moment the giant hand suddenly fell. Boom. Before the two old men could even react, their souls were destroyed. Not only the two old men but the entire ancient city also crumbled at this moment. Countless experts of the Gu clan fled frantically. Right at this moment, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared in the sky above the ancient city. The white-haired old man raised his head and glanced at the sky. In the next moment he pressed his fingers together and placed them vertically between his brows. Energy of the heavens and earth, universe in the palm. Break. As his voice fell, he gently flipped his right hand upwards. With this flip, it was as if the entire sky had been flipped open. Boom. As his voice fell, his right hand suddenly slapped forward. Boom. Where his palm landed, the space instantly collapsed. Then a crack suddenly appeared in the space in front of Yi Xian, and a ray of black light flashed out. Yi Xian was shocked. He stomped his right foot and a strong force gathered in his scabbard. Then he unsheathed his sword and slashed. Boom. The sound of the sword resounded through the sky. As Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the sword light instantly shattered. Yi Xian's entire body retreated rapidly. As he retreated, the space he passed through cracked layer by layer like a huge spider web. It was incomparably terrifying. After retreating hundreds of meters, Yi Xian stopped. His entire arm was trembling violently. In the distance, Zhou Xian laughed coldly. Your god set can hold on, but I don't know how long your physical body can last. As his voice fell, he slapped at Yi Xian through the air. Boom. The space around Yi Xian trembled violently. Then Yi Xian retreated rapidly again. This time his entire body actually began to burn like a fireball. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly roared and a wave of sword force swept out from his sword. Boom. Yi Xian forcibly stopped. His body was still surrounded by raging flames. What was burning was not the god set but the space around him. If it was not for the god set, he would have already been turned to ashes. Jian Zizai's voice suddenly sounded. If you use the chaotic chi to escape now, you still have a chance. Escape? Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The next moment he directly rushed towards Zhou Xian in the distance. The law of space quietly condensed between his brows. When Yi Xian arrived in front of Zhou Xian laughed coldly. He raised his hand and waved. A powerful force surged out like a tide. Boom. Before Yi Xian could even get close, his entire body instantly retreated hundreds of meters away. On the other side, Li Tian shook his head slightly. Behind him, an old man said in a low voice, "Although this Yi Xian is not bad compared to Gu Qian, he is still far too lacking." Li Tian said softly, "There is no way to compare. Li Tian has already become a saint and can control the power of heaven and earth. This is not something that Yi Xian can compare to, even if he has so many god sets." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. "Now let's see if he has a trump card. If he doesn't, then it's time to end this." The old man said in a low voice, "Does he have a trump card?" Li Tian smiled. "Yes, he definitely has one." The old man glanced at Li Tian and did not speak. At this moment, Gu Qian, who was nearby, suddenly walked towards Yi Xian. With every step he took, a powerful aura pressed towards Yi Xian. This aura directly permeated through space and instantly arrived around Yi Xian. The space around Yi Xian began to distort severely. The old man looked straight at Yi Xian. "The old man knows that there must be someone behind you. Come, call him out and let the old man see him." Yi Xian gripped his sword tightly in his right hand and did not speak. Seeing that Yi Xian did not speak, Gu Qian laughed coldly. He suddenly stomped his right foot. Boom! The space around Yi Xian trembled violently. A powerful force directly sent Yi Xian flying hundreds of meters away. And at this moment, Yi Xian's body began to tremble. In the distance, Gu Qian smiled coldly. "Is this the backlash?" Backlash. Yi Xian gripped his sword tightly in his right hand. At this moment, the god's set and invincible golden body had disappeared. This was the backlash. However, he forcefully suppressed it. Gu Qian sneered. "External forces are external forces in the end, not your own strength." As he spoke, he was about to attack. But at this moment, he suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. In the depths of the starry sky, two enormous creatures were flying towards them. Li Tian and Li Tian also looked into the depths of the starry sky. Soon Li Tian's eyes narrowed. Giant dragon. Dragon. In the heaven region there was naturally the demon race. Dragons were not considered demons but divine beasts. Of course, divine beasts were also differentiated by their bloodline. Soon the two giant dragons arrived in the sky above the crowd. In an instant, two waves of draconic might appeared. Many of the weaker people immediately prostrated themselves on the ground, shivering. Gu Qian clenched his right hand tightly, his expression somewhat unsightly. He coldly looked at Yi Xian. "You actually managed to invite a giant dragon. Dragon race." In the heaven region there was also a dragon race. However, they were very mysterious and had not appeared for many, many years. He had not expected that a giant dragon would appear this time, and two of them at that. Yi Xian ignored Gu Qian. He raised his head and looked at the two giant dragons. One of the giant dragons looked down at Yi Xian. "Human. What do you want us to do?" Yi Xian turned to look at Gu Qian. "Kill them." Gu Qian coldly looked at Yi Xian. He did not speak. The giant dragon looked at Gu Qian. Gu Qian solemnly said, "Sire, no matter what this Yi Xian offers, my Gu clan is willing to double it." The giant dragon looked down at Gu Qian. Gu Qian wanted to say something, but at this moment the giant dragon suddenly slapped a claw at Gu Qian. The power of a single claw could destroy the heavens and earth. Seeing this, Gu Qian's expression changed. He pressed his right hand down and in the blink of an eye he lifted it up. Bang! A powerful force swept up and instantly blasted against the giant dragon's claw. The entire sky trembled violently. A figure retreated repeatedly. It was Gu Qian. After Gu Qian stopped, he stared fixedly at Yi Xian in the distance. His expression was slightly ferocious. "If this is all your trump card, then old man, let me tell you you're dead today." As soon as he finished speaking, the situation suddenly changed. Chapter 4:15. Rumble. 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 4 black pillars that were 300 m wide suddenly shot into the sky from the collapsed ancient city. With the appearance of these 4 pillars, the heavens and earth began to change. The square divine formation. Not far away, Li Tian frowned slightly. This Gu family is really generous. They actually used the Gu clan's clan guarding formation. But it makes sense. If they didn't use this formation, the Gu clan wouldn't be able to defeat these 2 dragons easily even if they used all their strength. Even if they won, it would definitely be a Pyrrhic victory. The old man behind Li Tian spoke solemnly. Yi Xian isn't simple. He actually managed to invite the dragon clan. Li Tian nodded slightly. The dragon clan has vanished for a long time. I never expected them to reappear this time. Things are getting more and more complicated. As he spoke, he looked into the distance. When the 4 pillars appeared in the distance, the eyes of the 2 dragons in the sky instantly turned solemn. One of the dragons suddenly swooped down, and a powerful draconic aura swept down as if it wanted to crush the ground. It was extremely shocking. Zhou Xian smiled coldly and he raised his right hand slightly. Rise. As soon as he spoke, the 4 pillars trembled violently, and then they started to spin rapidly. In an instant, the entire world warped, and the draconic aura instantly shattered into nothingness. That wasn't all. The space in the world warped as if it was about to mince the 2 dragons into pieces. The 2 dragons roared in the sky and then they started to madly smash the space around them. The entire world trembled as if the end of the world had arrived. Below, Yi Xian hurriedly used the Tao of space. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him, and he was blasted backward before he could even see who it was. It was Zhou Xian. After flying for almost a kilometer, Yi Xian stopped. At this moment, his body had completely collapsed and his bones could be seen. The difference in their cultivation levels was too huge. Zhou Xian walked slowly towards Yi Xian. Although his gaze was on Yi Xian, he was extremely vigilant. Yi Xian could even invite a giant dragon. This meant that Yi Xian himself was not simple. Therefore, he was prepared to deal with any unexpected situation. On the other side, Li Tian was also staring at the distant Yi Xian. He knew that the current Yi Xian was already at his limit. If Yi Xian didn't reveal his trump card now, he wouldn't have a chance. Because the 2 giant dragons had already been trapped by the Gu family's 4-sided Great Formation. Although the 4-sided Divine Formation couldn't kill the 2 dragons wouldn't be able to break free from it in a short time. Zhou Xian was aware of this as well. Thus, even though he had heavily injured Yi Xian, he did not underestimate him at all. In next to no time, Zhou Xian arrived 30 m away from Yi Xian, and he stared at Yi Xian while slowly clenching his right hand. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly spoke softly. Since it's like that, then the Gu clan can be buried with us, brother and sister. A wisp of ridicule arose on the corners of Zhou Qian's mouth. You? Right at this moment, a black Xiaota suddenly appeared between Yi Xian's brows. The voice of the gods on the 2nd floor resounded abruptly. Have you thought about the consequences? Yi Xian laughed with self-ridicule. I'm about to die, so why would I care about the consequences? It's not a loss to drag 1 down with me, and it's a gain to drag 2 down with me. As soon as he finished speaking, a strand of invisible pressure suddenly appeared here. Bang! In the sky, the 4 towering pillars shattered with a loud rumble. At this moment, everyone in the surroundings had gazed at Yi Xian, whereas Zhou Xian had even retreated explosively over 1 kilometer back. Everyone was looking at the black Xiaota between Yi Xian's brows, and it included the 2 dragons. Yi Xian's figure started to tremble violently as if it was on the verge of shattering into pieces. The voice of the gods on the 2nd floor resounded. Have you really thought it through? Yi Xian didn't answer, and the black Xiaota between his brows suddenly flew out and hovered above his head. In an instant, an illusory black Xiaota appeared above everyone, including Zhou Xian and the experts of the Gu clan who were hiding in the shadows. When the pagoda appeared above his head, Zhou Xian's expression changed greatly. He pushed his hands forward and a powerful aura surged from his body. However, the black pagoda did not move and was not affected in the slightest. At this moment, Zhou Xian was slightly panicked. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Withdraw." As soon as he finished speaking, countless experts of the Gu clan and Zhou Xian vanished into thin air. They vanished without a trace. Li Tian and Zhou Xian were horrified, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. The eyes of the 2 dragons were also filled with a solemn expression. Fear. Even they were fearful of the Xiaota that was hovering above Yi Xian's head. In the prison pagoda there were over 30 people on the 1st floor. They were all the top experts of the Gu clan and their leader was Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian looked at his surroundings in a daze, and not far in front of them, there was a little fellow staring coldly at them. Shaolinger. Zhou Xian was about to speak, but at this moment a blood-red Sin character appeared above their heads. At the same time, Everyone present was unable to move, including Zhou Xian. At this moment Zhou Xian finally panicked. Zhou Xian raised his head and roared, "Where is this?" No one answered. Zhou Xian and the others began to turn illusory. More accurately, they began to disappear bit by bit, and they were watching themselves disappear. Very quickly, screams of despair rang out in the prison pagoda. Not long later there were over 30 storage rings on the first floor. Outside the prison pagoda, after Zhou Xian and the others disappeared, Xian collapsed on the ground, his body trembling violently. Backlash. This time there were several types of backlash. Especially after using the prison pagoda, the backlash was even more terrifying. However, Xian forcibly stood up. At this moment his facial features were severely contorted. Xian turned his head to look at Li Tian, who was not far away. The latter's expression changed slightly, his eyes filled with dread and solemnity. After a moment of silence, Li Tendo said, "We have no intention of becoming enemies with you." Xian did not reply. He walked towards the ancient city not far away, and there were still many experts of the Gu clan in the city. Xian walked very slowly, his body twitching from time to time. When he reached the city gates, he raised his head to look at the 2 dragons in the sky. Kill all the experts of the Gu clan in the city." The 2 dragons exchanged a glance, and in the next instant, they directly swooped down from the sky with extreme speed, instantly smashing into the ancient city. Rumble. The entire ancient city shook violently as if there was a great earthquake, and countless screams rang out. Not only that, the entire ancient city began to collapse inch by inch, and countless dust and smoke rose into the sky. Xian continued to walk forward. Although his body began to twitch, he still walked slowly, and the direction he was walking in was the Gu clan residence. In the city, the 2 dragons wantonly destroyed, and no one could stop them. Very soon Xian arrived in front of the Gu clan residence, and at the gate stood an old man. The old man wore a loose black robe and his hair was all white. The old man stared at Xian, and just as he was about to speak, Xian suddenly said, "Where is my sister?" The old man said in a low voice, "Xian, this time the Gu clan admits defeat." Xian suddenly roared angrily, "Where is my sister?" The old man slowly clenched his right hand. "Xian, if you retreat with these 2 dragons, the Gu clan will let your sister go, otherwise." Xian suddenly stomped his right foot. Boom. The ground beneath his feet instantly shattered. Xian raised his head to look at the 2 dragons. Kill them for this, daddy, leave no one in the Gu clan alive." Insolence. Nearby, the black-robed old man angrily shouted, "Xian, don't go too far." Xian pointed at the black-robed old man angrily. "This daddy is going too far, and today no one in the Gu clan will live." The black-robed old man wanted to say something, but a dragon had already charged at him. Seeing this, the black-robed old man's expression changed greatly. In the face of a giant dragon, he naturally did not dare to be careless. He immediately took a step forward and gestured with his hands. With this gesture, the space in front of him suddenly trembled. It undulated like waves, and streams of powerful worldly energies and spatial energies continuously surged out. However, as the dragon charged, the 2 forces instantly shattered, and the white-haired old man retreated rapidly. The other dragon directly swooped down from the sky, instantly crashing into the Gu clan residence. Boom. The entire Gu clan residence instantly collapsed, dust and smoke rising into the sky. On the other side, the old man behind Li Tian shook his head slightly. "The Gu clan is finished." Li Tian said softly, "Do you really think the Gu clan is so simple?" The old man looked at Li Tian, and Li Tian looked at the black-robed old man in the distance. "The Gu clan has been around for 10,000 years. If this was all they had, they would have been gone long ago. Furthermore, don't forget one person." As if thinking of something, the old man's expression changed slightly. "You mean he?" Li Tian nodded. "If I'm not wrong, he should be appearing soon." In the distance, the 2 dragons were wreaking havoc in a frenzy. Moreover, they practically killed anyone they saw. For a time, the entire Gu clan residence and the entire ancient city were filled with wails. Just at this moment, a formless pressure suddenly appeared. As soon as this pressure appeared, the 2 dragons in the sky instantly stopped. They raised their heads and looked into the distance. There, a middle-aged man was walking through the air. This person was the Gu clan's patriarch, Gu Tianxing. Seeing this person, the expressions of the two dragons instantly became solemn. Li Tian said softly, "This is interesting." In the sky, Gu Tianxing glanced at the two dragons and said softly, "This is interesting. Even the dragon clan has appeared." As soon as he spoke, he opened his right hand and a small golden ball appeared in his palm. In the next moment, countless rays of golden light shot down from the sky. Seeing these rays of golden light, the expressions of the two dragons changed drastically, and they retreated explosively. However, it was still a bit too late. The rays of golden light pierced through their bodies and blood sprayed everywhere. Below, Xian was already lying on the ground. At this moment he was truly unable to hold on any longer. Backlash. To be able to hold on until now with the addition of several kinds of backlash for him, was already his limit. In the sky, after Gu Tianxing seriously injured the two dragons, he walked towards Xian below. On the ground, Xian said softly, "Ling I've done my best." As soon as he said this, his consciousness began to blur. In the sky, Gu Tianxing suddenly stopped and his eyes narrowed slightly. Who? P.S. After this matter is completely over, I will calm down and properly update, so that I won't let down every reader who supports me down. Seeing that you guys have helped me end my roots, I'm very touched, really. Chapter 416. Who? As soon as Gu Tianxing said this, the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Who is there? Li Tian and the rest looked around. The surroundings were very calm. There was nothing at all. However, Gu Tianxing seemed to be facing a formidable enemy. Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Xian. The woman looked to be in her 20s. She wore a white short-sleeved shirt that exposed her jade-like arms. She wore a long black dress with a white flower embroidered on the edge. The flower was named Permitha. She wore a pair of white cloth shoes that were spotless. The woman's hair was very long, reaching her waist, and within her cloud-like hair, there were some small braids. The woman was also very beautiful. Her facial features were exquisite, especially her eyes, which were very big and watery. Moreover, her pupils were light blue. After the woman came out, she raised her hands and looked up at the sky with an intoxicated expression. The outside world is still the best. Opposite the woman, Gu Tianxing said in a deep voice, "Who are you?" The woman ignored Gu Tianxing and greedily inhaled the air around her. Gu Tianxing looked alert, ready to attack at any time. At this moment, the woman seemed to have thought of something. She suddenly turned around to look at Xian, who was lying on the ground. Xian was completely unconscious and his aura was growing weaker and weaker. The woman looked down at Xian and shook her head slightly. How tragic. It's not just a normal tragedy. As she said this, she suddenly turned to look at Gu Tianxing, who was not far away. She sized up Gu Tianxing with a hint of surprise in her eyes. He almost broke through to Saint Realm. That's quite rare. Gu Tianxing stared at the woman. Who the hell are you? The woman smiled and said, My name is Xianxia. Have you heard of me? Xianxia. Gu Tianxing frowned slightly. Never heard of it. Xianxia shook his head and sighed. Sure enough, things remain the same, but the people have changed. Gu Tianxing said in a deep voice, I wonder who this Xian is. Xianxia smiled and said, I want to take him away. Do you have a problem with that? Gu Tianxing's eyes narrowed slightly. I am untalented and would like to seek your advice. The corners of Xianxia's mouth lifted slightly. All right. With that, she gently pointed her jade-like hand at Gu Tianxing. He pointed his finger down. The space within a radius of tens of thousands of feet cracked in an instant like a giant spider web. At this moment, the expressions of Gu Tianxing and Li Tian, who were not far away, changed drastically. This was especially true for Gu Tianxing because he discovered that traces of mysterious power had locked onto him. At this moment, he was actually unable to move in the slightest. Gu Tianxing looked at Xianxia in horror. You, who the hell are you? Xianxia laughed and said, What is the power of heaven and earth? What did it mean to be able to control the universe with one's palm? Your generation of Saint Realm cultivators is too weak. One word, weak. 2 words, extremely weak. As soon as she finished speaking, she clenched her right fist. Boom. Gu Tianxing's physical body shattered in an instant, and at the same time his soul began to gradually become illusory. Xianxia suddenly turned his head to look at Li Tian and Li Tian, who were not far away. Li Tian hurriedly said, Sir, Jian Zizai shook his head and waved his hand. Boom. Li Tian and Gu Tianxing's bodies instantly crumbled. Just like Gu Tianxing, their souls directly became illusory and began to disappear bit by bit. Li Tian stared at Jian Zizai. Why? Jian Zizai laughed and said, You did not make a move, but if you were given a chance you would definitely make a move, right? Li Tian stared at Jian Zizai. You are the mysterious person behind him. Jian Zizai shook his head. Actually, before this I also hoped that he would die, but I changed my mind. Li Tian asked, Why? Jian Zizai laughed and said, If he had chosen to escape and give up on his sister he would definitely have died, but he did not escape. The great way, longevity and living, in his eyes they are all inferior to his sister. I admire him, so I saved his life. As soon as she finished speaking she gently waved her jade-like hand. Boom. Not far away the souls of Gu Qian, Li Tian and the others instantly shattered. Jian Zizai turned his head to look at the two giant dragons in the sky. The two giant dragons' expressions changed greatly, and they hurriedly retreated. Jian Zizai laughed and said, Don't be nervous, I won't kill you. As she spoke she looked down and scanned with her divine sense. Soon she frowned and said, Not here. A moment later she picked up Yi Xian with one hand and was about to leave. However, at that moment the ground below suddenly trembled violently, and then a powerful aura spread out from below. Jian Zizai stopped and bent down to look down. Below, from the ruins of the Gu family's mansion, an old man slowly walked out. A soul body. The old man walked into the air and looked at Jian Zizai. I am the ancestor of the Gu family. I don't know how the Gu family has offended you, sir, for you to destroy the entire Gu family. The ancestor of the Gu family. Jian Zizai smiled slightly. You have a problem with that? The old man stared at Jian Zizai. Yes, and it's very big. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura suddenly shot into the sky, pressing towards Jian Zizai. In the air Jian Zizai smiled. The next moment she gently pressed down with her right hand. Boom. The aura released by the old man instantly shattered. At the same time, a hand directly grabbed the old man's throat. The old man's expression changed greatly. You are... Before he finished speaking the old man, who was already a soul body, instantly shattered and completely turned into nothingness. In the air Jian Zizai shook her head and smiled. She carried Yi Xian and turned to leave. Below, the two giant dragons looked at each other and then quickly left. Not long after the two giant dragons left, a mysterious aura suddenly appeared in the ruins of the ancient city. The Gu family has been passed down for 10,000 years, yet it was destroyed in one day. Could it be that the Holy Land or the Weiyang Star Palace made a move? Impossible, they have no reason to. I heard that Yi Xian came to the Gu family. What a joke. Yi Xian is only at the void-piercing realm. How could he destroy the Gu family? No matter what, the heaven region will not be peaceful in the near future. The Gu family was destroyed. The news of the Gu family's destruction quickly spread throughout the heaven region. The entire heaven region was shocked. As for how the Gu family was destroyed, no one knew. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian felt someone calling his ear softly. The voice was somewhat familiar. However, his head was very dizzy and he felt a little sleepy. As if thinking of something, he suddenly sat up. Bling, Xian, A woman hugged Yi Xian tightly. This woman was Zhou Xian. Yi Xian looked around. At the moment he was on the 9th level of the infernal hell. A small monster squatted in a corner not far away. The small monster was lying on the ground with its head close to the ground like a docile puppy. Not far in front of the small monster stood a woman. Jian Zizai. Although Yi Xian had never seen Jian Zizai, he knew immediately that this woman was Jian Zizai because the 4th layer of the seal was gone. Not only that, but he also felt that the other layers of the seal had loosened. The problem was very serious. However, at the moment he did not have time to care about this matter. Right now he only had one thing in mind, and that was Yi Ling. Yi Xian looked at Jian Zizai. Jian Zizai walked in front of Yi Xian and smiled. You're awake. Yi Xian nodded. Jian Zizai smiled slightly. I have 2 pieces of bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Yi Xian shook his head. Miss Jian, where's my sister? Jian Zizai said, I didn't see her at the Gu family that day. Hearing this, Yi Xian's face darkened. He was about to get up, but he found that at the moment he was powerless and unable to move at all. Xianxia put her hands behind her back. She leaned over to look at Zhou Xian and smiled. I have 2 pieces of bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Zhou Xian said softly, is there a difference? Xianxia raised a finger and her smiling eyes narrowed into crescent moons. First, you used the prison pagoda again. The seal on the 4th layer has been broken. Not only the 4th layer but the seals on the upper layers have also loosened. Some people have even awakened. Zhou Xian said in a deep voice, what else? Xianxia smiled. The second bad thing is that your bones and meridians have been broken. Although you are not dead, you are equivalent to a cripple. Zhou Xian asked, can I be saved? Xianxia smiled slightly. How should I put this? Maybe there is, maybe not at all. It's all up to you. Zhou Xian nodded. Understood. Xianxia smiled. She turned to look at the little monster not far away. The latter's expression changed greatly. It hurriedly crawled even lower. It hugged its head with its claws and kept begging, don't hit me. Xianxia walked in front of the little monster and looked it up and down. Do you want to go out? The little monster was stunned for a moment, then nodded vigorously. Xianxia smiled. You can go out, but you have to do something. The little monster nodded without thinking. It only knew that it could not resist this woman. Xianxia nodded the little monster's head and laughed. She then turned to look at Zhou Xian not far away. Can you walk? Zhou Xian wanted to stand up, but he found that he could not. Beside him, Zhou Xian hurriedly helped him up, but he shook his head. I can do it myself. As he said this, he gritted his teeth and exerted force bit by bit. However, as soon as he exerted force, his whole body was in excruciating pain. He endured the pain and stood up. Xianxia glanced at Zhou Xian and smiled. Does it hurt? Zhou Xian nodded. Xianxia smiled. It will hurt more in the future. This is just the beginning. Come with me. As she said this, she walked to the wall. Looking at the wall in front of her, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and her jade-like hand gently drew a line. The wall in front of Xianxia cracked. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from inside. Who dares to trespass? Xianxia frowned slightly. Nonsense. As she said this, she suddenly waved her jade-like hand. Boom. The wall trembled violently. Then the voice inside the wall came to an abrupt stop. Zhou Xian asked, this is? Xianxia smiled. I'll show you the real infernal purgatory. As she said this, she walked in. With Zhou Xian's help, Zhou Xian slowly walked over. As soon as he walked in, a gust of cold wind blew. Zhou Xian could not help but shiver and his whole body was bone-chilling. At the side, the little monster hesitated for a moment, then hurriedly followed. Chapter 417. There was another floor below the 9th floor. The 10th floor was extremely dark, and the surroundings were filled with a bone-piercing cold wind. Not only that, but there were also some sorrowful cries coming from the surrounding darkness from time to time. At first glance it was hair-raising. At this moment Xianxia, who was walking at the front, suddenly waved his right hand. Quiet. As soon as his voice fell, the surroundings immediately quieted down. But soon, another sorrowful cry came from the side. The little monster looked to the right with pity. Xianxia raised his hand and waved. An instant later, a scream suddenly came from the right. Behind Xianxia, Zhou Xian was holding on to Zhou Xian tightly. At this moment Zhou Xian was as weak as a child. Zhou Xian did not speak, but the tears in her eyes had not stopped since the beginning. Not long after, Xianxia suddenly stopped. There was an altar not far in front of him. In the center of the altar was a black chair and behind the chair was a sword. The sword was about 4 feet long, as wide as a palm, and was completely black. The tip of the sword was surrounded by a black light. Xianxia walked to the altar, glanced at the chair and smiled slightly. Hades, you still haven't come out. Are you not giving me face? After a moment of silence, a voice suddenly sounded. How dare you? As the voice fell, a black shadow quietly condensed on the chair. This black shadow was a ball of darkness, and its appearance could not be seen clearly. Seeing this black shadow, the little monster's expression changed drastically. It hurriedly retreated until there was nowhere to retreat to before stopping at the corner of the wall. His body could not help but tremble. Hades said softly, Jian Zizai, you have disappeared for tens of thousands of years. Jian Zizai smiled slightly. Yes. After tens of thousands of years things have remained the same but the people have changed. Hades said, indeed the God clan and the Nether clan are no longer here. Jian Zizai slowly walked up the altar. Hades, I have come this time to make a deal with you. Hades said, I would like to hear the details. Jian Zizai pointed his right hand at Zhou Xian who was not far away. Take a look at him. Zhou Xian was speechless. Hades' gaze fell on Zhou Xian. After a moment he said, this person is your disciple? Jian Zizai shook his head. The Nether King said, that's true. With your taste how could you fall for him? Zhou Xian was speechless. Huh. Jian Zizai laughed. Zhou Xian, did you hear that? Zhou Xian faced the Netherworld King. Just as he was about to speak, the Netherworld King suddenly said, although his talent in sword Dao isn't bad, that's all. Jian Zizai smiled and said, take a closer look. The Nether King's gaze once again landed on Zhou Xian. A moment later he said, I really can't see anything extraordinary about him. Jian Zizai smiled then looked at Zhou Xian. Are you not convinced? Zhou Xian nodded. Jian Zizai smiled and said, then tell me what's so special about you? Zhou Xian said solemnly, is there any benefit in proving myself? Jian Zizai nodded. It's very beneficial. Can even change your own fate. Zhou Xian was silent for a moment then said, Miss Jian was once a peerless figure. Isn't it extraordinary to be chosen by Miss Jian? Jian Zizai was stunned then laughed out loud. After laughing for a moment she looked at Zhou Xian. I'm very satisfied with your answer. Saying that she turned her head to look at the Netherworld King. Netherworld King, if your real body was here, you would be able to see how extraordinary he is. The Netherworld King looked at Zhou Xian again. After a moment he shook his head. Miss Jian, please explain. Jian Zizai smiled slightly. You and I both know that everyone in this world has their own destiny. Everyone has his or her own destiny. We call it fate. Many people can't feel fate in their entire lives, but some slightly stronger people can faintly feel fate and change it through their own efforts. They can even go to a higher level, cut off the past, cut off the future. Saying that she looked at Zhou Xian again. This time she used Xianxia to transmit her voice. His fate is not fixed. Under normal circumstances he hasn't felt fate yet, so it's impossible for him to feel it, let alone change it. Netherworld King, do you understand what I mean? The Netherworld King was silent for a moment, then said, you mean his future has unlimited possibilities? Jian Zizai shook her head. If that's all, why would I like him? Saying that she softly said, his previous life was not simple. Not only his previous life but the life before that. The Netherworld King said, there are many people who reincarnate. Jian Zizai softly said, what if he isn't someone from the fourth dimension? Hearing this, the Netherworld King suddenly stood up. What do you mean? Jian Zizai smiled. What do you think? The place quieted down. After a moment the Netherworld King said, why did you bring him here? Jian Zizai smiled. To invest. Investment. The Netherworld King said in a deep voice, tell me in detail. Jian Zizai said, I want to ask the Netherworld King for the soul-suppressing sword for him. The Netherworld King shook his head. Oh. Jian Zizai nodded slightly, then turned to look at Zhou Xian. Let's go. Zhou Xian nodded then turned to leave. At this moment the Netherworld King suddenly said, wait. Jian Zizai stopped and so did Zhou Xian. Jian Zizai turned to look at the Netherworld King and said with a smile, what is it? The Netherworld King said in a deep voice, even if I give this sword to him with his current condition he won't be able to control it. He might even harm himself. Jian Zizai smiled. That's his own business. Whether you're willing to give it to him or not is up to you. The Netherworld King was silent for a moment then said, Miss Jian, you said that he isn't someone from the fourth dimension. Do you have any proof? Jian Zizai turned to look at Zhou Xian. She flicked her finger and an illusory Xiaota suddenly appeared between Zhou Xian's eyebrows, but it quickly disappeared. The Netherworld King, on the other hand, was completely stunned. A moment later the Netherworld King waved his right hand, and the sword behind him floated directly in front of Zhou Xian. In an instant Zhou Xian felt an extremely sinister aura. If the Yin Yang spiritual chi sword was strange, Then this sword gave him a feeling that it was even stranger than the Yin-Yang spiritual chi sword. No, it was not on the same level at all. Difficult to control. This was the first thought that came to Yi Xian's mind when he saw this sword. Yi Xian faced Jian Zizai. Jian Zizai smiled and said, "This sword is not just a sword, it is also a kind of law. If you can control it, it is equivalent to opening a new door for you." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Miss Jian, my current condition." Jian Zizai said, "So, you want to give up?" Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Miss Jian, can I subdue this sword after my injuries are healed?" Jian Zizai walked in front of Yi Xian and looked directly at Yi Xian. "Now you only have two choices. First, choose to take the sword, and second, choose to give up." Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Then he reached out and held the soul-suppressing sword. However, in an instant he felt as if his soul was about to be sucked out. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. He quickly let go of his hand and looked at Jian Zizai. "I give up. Give up." These two words he had never said lightly, because he was afraid that if he gave up too often, it would become a habit. However, he also knew that people should act according to their abilities. If there were some things that could be done, then do it with all your might. If there were some things that could not be done, then don't overestimate yourself and do it. At this moment he knew very well that with his current condition he could not subdue this sword at all. Forcibly subduing it would only lead to death. As Yi Xian's voice fell, the field suddenly quieted down. After a moment Yi Xian said softly, "Did I disappoint you, Miss Jian?" Jian Zizai smiled. "No." Yi Xian looked at Jian Zizai, puzzled. Jian Zizai smiled slightly. "If you had recklessly tried to subdue this sword just now, that would have been foolish. People should act according to their abilities. Do you know what that means?" Yi Xian bowed slightly. "Please enlighten me, Miss Jian." Jian Zizai spread out her right hand and punched out. Crack. The space in the field instantly collapsed and countless dark matter forces seeped out from all directions. However, as she let go of her lily-white hand, the surrounding space instantly returned to normal. At this moment she gently waved her lily-white hand. In an instant the surrounding space rippled like water, undulating in waves. It was extremely strange. After a while she withdrew her hand and looked at Yi Xian. "Did you see that? Hardness and softness. Two kinds of power, two completely different effects. Being a person is also like this. Blindly being hard is easy to break, blindly being soft is too soft. Only by combining hardness and softness, being hard when you should be hard and soft when you should be soft, can you go further. The same is true for swordsmanship. If you try to be soft, there will be unexpected results." At this point she looked at Yi Xian. "As you once said, if you can beat me then fight. If you can't beat me then run. Of course many times we have to fight even if we can't beat you. If a person is too tactful it will only backfire. Of course you have to control the strength." Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "Why did Miss Jian help me like this?" The corners of Jian Zizai's mouth raised slightly. "Because you are handsome and I like you. Is this reason enough?" Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Jian Zizai laughed and said, "I used to want to kill you and take the tower, but now I've changed my mind." Yi Xian asked, "Why?" Jian Zizai smiled. "Don't ask everything. Some things are better to keep a little suspense." As she said this, she pointed at Pluto King on a chair not far away. "Yi Xian, remember this well. Today Pluto King gave you the sword. This favor must be returned in the future. Do you understand?" Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then bowed slightly to Pluto King not far away. "Thank you." Pluto King said, "Don't thank me first. Whether you can get this sword or not is another matter." As he said this he looked at Jian Zizai. "Miss Jian, farewell." As his voice fell he disappeared into thin air. In the field Jian Zizai looked at Yi Xian. "If you understand, there is still a path ahead. If you don't, Zhou Xian. Sco. What happens next depends on him." Zhou Xian was a little hesitant, but Jian Zizai directly took her away. The little monster had long disappeared without a trace. Only Yi Xian was left in the hall with a sword and countless strange existences in the dark around him. "Peace. Sorry I've been here for a while. It can't be helped. There are too many troublesome things to arrange for the funeral of an old man. There are too many things. Because when to bury him, the village teacher has the final say. There are also some village customs, such as people who come to my house I have to kneel. I also have to keep watch every night. I've been really busy during this period of time. I've never been so busy. Of course, no matter how busy I am, I have no complaints. I don't want to think about anything else now. I just want to properly arrange for my father's funeral. Once this matter is over, I will resume updating. Thank you for your tolerance, thank you. Chapter 4:18. Yi Xian stood there quietly. He had been standing there for 6 hours. Thinking. From the beginning until now he had been thinking quietly. Thinking about the past, thinking about the present, thinking about the future. Swordsmanship. He had come into contact with the sword at the age of 18, and the person who had taught him the sword was the woman in the plain dress, a peerless expert who was so powerful that she had no limits. He had also cultivated the invincible sword body that the woman in the plain dress had given him. The woman in the plain dress was his guide. Could be said that his starting point was very, very high. Not only that, but the woman in the plain dress had also given him a clear path of swordsmanship, so that he would not lose his way on the path of swordsmanship. Faith. Confidence. Along the way, the core of his swordsmanship could be said to be these 2 points. However, if he asked himself, did he really understand swordsmanship? And was the path of swordsmanship really so simple? Thinking of this, Yi Xian frowned deeply. After about another 6 hours, his brows gradually relaxed. At this moment, he understood one thing. Swordsmanship, swordsmanship. All along, the path he had walked was the path of swordsmanship that the woman in the plain dress had paved for him. This path was easy to walk, but it was not something he had walked on himself. To put it simply, he had never truly found his own Tao all along. Thinking of this, a smile gradually appeared on Yi Xian's face. Outside the endless purgatory, Jian Zizai had his hands behind his back as he looked up at the starry sky. Not far away from him was Zhou Xian and the little monster that was lying on the ground. After an unknown amount of time, Jian Zizai suddenly chuckled and said, "The current world is no longer the world I know." Zhou Xian looked at Jian Zizai and said softly, "With senior strength, I'm afraid there are few opponents in this world, right?" Jian Zizai shook his head. "I used to think so, but now I don't think so anymore." Zhou Xian was puzzled. Why? Jian Zizai gently pulled with his hands, then drew a circle. The universe we are in now is called the fourth dimension, and in this vast four-dimensional universe, it is endlessly big. As far as I know, there are countless star sectors in the fourth dimension, and these star sectors are also divided into big and small civilizations, namely Level 1 civilization, Level 2 civilization, and Level 3 civilization. This never-ending star sector should belong to a Level 3 civilization. No, it should barely be considered a Level 3 civilization. Zhou Xian stared blankly for a moment before saying, "Level 1 civilizations are the largest?" Jian Zizai nodded and said softly, "Above them are super civilizations, special civilizations, and..." At this point she shook her head. "It's useless." In the past, the god race was so powerful that all worlds submitted to them. There was also the Netherworld race. That peerless Netherworld king used his own power to create the Netherworld realm, establish reincarnation, and collect the souls of all living things in the world. This kind of power was equivalent to the legendary creator. These two races were both Level 1 civilizations, but so what? The god race perished, the Nether race annihilated. At this point she raised her head and looked into the depths of the vast starry sky. Apart from that, there was also the special civilization of the Life Forbidden Zone back then. No one can enter this forbidden zone. However, that Life Forbidden Zone has now disappeared in the long river of history. As she spoke, she shook her head and smiled. There is also the legendary primordial race. It is said that the origin of our fourth dimension's martial arts civilization was created by this race. If it was really created by this race, then where did they go? Were they destroyed? Or did they go to the legendary fifth dimension? After saying that, she raised her head and looked into the depths of the starry sky again, a trace of confusion in her eyes. At the side, Zhou Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "With senior strength, can't you go to the legendary fifth dimension?" Jian Zizai retracted her gaze and said with a smile, "I want to go, but unfortunately I'm blocked by that tower. If it weren't for the appearance of those 3 people back then, I'm afraid I would never be able to leave the tower in this lifetime." Zhou Xian frowned slightly. 3 people? Jian Zizai nodded and said softly, 3 very powerful fellows. In the vast fourth dimension, there will always be people who are so powerful that they can't be reasoned with. Zhou Xian suddenly asked, Senior, what exactly is that tower? Jian Zizai was silent for a moment, then said, I don't know, but I can be sure that it is an object of the fifth dimension. Fifth dimension. Zhou Xian said in a deep voice. If there is the fifth dimension, does that mean that there are also the sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth dimensions? Jian Zizai smiled and said, an ant can only walk on the ground forever. Can't touch the ocean, can't touch the starry sky, and can't touch the universe. In the vast universe, aren't we humans also ants? Speaking of this, she paused slightly and said, humans are actually very insignificant. The 10th level of infernal hell. Xian was still standing quietly. Good and evil. At this moment he thought of a sentence that the woman in the plain dress had once said, everything in the world, there are positive and negative, there are yin and yang, there are good and evil. And Jian Zizai had just said that there were hard and soft, his sword had always been hard. Since it could be hard, why couldn't it be soft? He had always wanted to advance. If he could advance, why couldn't he retreat? Retreat. Thinking of this, Xian suddenly felt enlightened. He sat down cross-legged and soon two completely different sword intents appeared around him. And these sword intents began to weaken and they became weaker and weaker. Soon all the sword intents disappeared. Not only that, but his aura also began to retreat. Not long after, he went from the void-piercing realm to the spell-controlling realm, then to the 10,000 techniques realm. Not long after, he went from the void-piercing realm to the chi-change realm. Void-piercing realm, spell-controlling realm, 10,000 techniques realm, ethereal opening realm, spirit unite realm, high sky realm, chi-control realm, chi-change realm. In a short period of time he fell from the void-piercing realm to the chi-change realm, a total of 8 realms. The current him was the chi-change realm. Of course, although the realm had fallen, the experience and ability of each realm had not disappeared. However, the sword intents had truly dissipated. And his goal was to cultivate again. Whether it was the way of the sword or the realm of cultivation, he had to walk it all over again. This time he wanted to walk by himself. Not only did he want to walk by himself, he wanted to walk steadily. The scariest thing for a person was not failure, but not having the courage to start all over again after failure. The so-called chi-change realm was to use the chi in the body to achieve a qualitative change, surpassing the strength of the body. The so-called chi control realm was to use chi to achieve the ability to control objects. The so-called air control realm was to use chi to achieve the ability to fly in the air. The so-called divine unity realm was to make contact with the spiritual sea, allowing the body and the spiritual sea to merge. The so-called void-piercing realm was to break through space and obtain dark matter energy. 2 hours later, Xian was shocked to find that he had not actually reached the peak of each realm. For example, the chi-change realm. Before he had fully grasped chi, he had already advanced to the chi control realm. It could be said that he only knew a little about each realm and had not truly grasped it. Not only that, but he was also extremely dependent on external objects. Now he finally understood why Nether King and the others said that he was only average. Water. Because he had walked so far so slowly. The path of cultivation was like building a building. The better the foundation, the higher the building would be and the more stable it would be. Of course, compared to ordinary people, he was naturally considered a genius. But in front of these peerless powers he was not even worth mentioning. At this moment he finally understood the meaning of what the Nether King had said to him before. Many times people not only needed to look forward but also look back. Perhaps there would be unexpected gains. Not only did people need to know their own strengths, but they also needed to know their own weaknesses. The same was true for cultivation. In the 10th floor, Xian's aura began to slowly become stronger and stronger. About half an hour later, his aura had recovered to the void-piercing realm. But after a while, this powerful aura began to weaken again. Just like this, Xian started over and over again. Time passed bit by bit. Outside the infernal purgatory, it was like sitting on top of the palace. The little demon beast was lying in front of her, constantly rubbing against her feet. Docile. This ferocious beast that once belonged to the god race was now as docile as a puppy. Next to her, Zhou Xian's face was full of worry because Xian had been inside for 5 days. Jian Zizai suddenly said, "Don't worry. He hasn't come out yet," which proves that he has already comprehended it. Zhou Xian looked at the Nether King, who smiled and said, "His starting point is too high because his guide is too strong. Although there are advantages, there are also endless disadvantages. If he can comprehend this, he will be reborn." Zhou Xian said softly, What if he can't? The Nether King smiled. It's nothing. It's just that it's a waste of that person's guidance. At this point she suddenly turned her head to the right. In the depths of the starry sky on her right, a figure was rushing over. The Nether King had discovered the other party, but the other party had not yet discovered the Nether King. The Nether King was about to attack. Suddenly she looked down at the infernal purgatory below. A moment later the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. Interesting. On the 10th floor. At this moment Zhou Xian was in the Qi-changing realm. However, his aura in the Qi-changing realm was even stronger than that of the void-piercing realm. Completely comprehended. Because at this moment he had completely comprehended the Qi-changing realm. Not only that, but the speed of his imperial sword was at least several times faster than before. And Zhou Xian knew that this was far from enough. Because he could feel that he had not reached the limit of the Qi-changing realm. Limit. What he was pursuing now was the limit. He would not stop until he reached the limit. Any matter, no matter how small, would not be a small matter if he reached the limit. And at this moment Zhou Xian had found his own path of cultivation. Reverse. Adversity cultivation. P.S. Thank you to the readers who have been voting for me during this period of time. When I update you still vote for me. Thank you, truly thank you. I won't let my family down, I won't let my readers down. Chapter 419. So-called adversity cultivation was equivalent to cultivating in the opposite direction. Of course, cultivating in the opposite direction meant advancing by retreating. Just like now, though he was in the Qi-change realm, his state of mind was in the void-piercing realm. Not only that, but the realms from the Qi-change realm to the void-piercing realm were always in his mind. Realms. To put it simply, realms were a framework, and what he needed to do now was to jump out of this framework. Swordsmanship was the same. He had never walked this path before, and the plain-dressed woman had never told him about it. This was a path he had figured out himself. In the field, Zhou Xian took a deep breath. At this moment he was no longer confused. His thoughts were clear and his state of mind was clear. Zhou Xian stood up. At this moment he was in the Qi-change realm. He did not recover to the void-piercing realm because he felt that he was still a little short. Every realm was a little short of the limit. And he could not break through in a short time, so he chose to stay. As if thinking of something, he opened his palm and a sword appeared in it. Fairy sword. Looking at the fairy sword in his hand, Zhou Xian smiled and put it away, then looked at the soul-quelling sword in front of him. No words. Zhou Xian turned and left, still walking very slowly because his injuries had not fully recovered. Just as he was about to leave, the soul-quelling sword behind him suddenly trembled, then turned into a black sword light and flew in front of him. Zhou Xian looked at the soul-quelling sword in front of him, and after a moment of silence he said, "Are you willing to follow me?" The soul-quelling sword trembled. Zhou Xian smiled, "All right." As he spoke he reached for the sword and walked out. Flowers are fragrant, butterflies come. When Zhou Xian walked out of infernal purgatory, Zhou Xian hurriedly flew in front of him. Seeing Zhou Xian's worried expression, Zhou Xian smiled. "I'm fine." Zhou Xian whispered, "Really?" Zhou Xian nodded, "I'm not lying." Zhou Xian was about to say something. Meanwhile, the space in the distance suddenly trembled violently and then a man appeared. Zhou Xian's expression changed when she saw the man. Zhou Lian. At the side, Jian Zizai smiled and said, "He's not Zhou Lian." Zhou Xian looked at Jian Zizai, who smiled and said, "The body is Zhou Lian's but the soul is not." Zhou Xian looked at Zhou Lian again. Only now did she realize that this person's aura was completely different from before. Zhou Lian looked at Jian Zizai with an expressionless face. "How should I address you?" Jian Zizai smiled. "Jian Zizai." Zhou Lian frowned. "Never heard of it." Jian Zizai smiled. "It's normal." Zhou Lian said in a deep voice, "Why do you want to annihilate my Dugu clan?" Jian Zizai was stunned for a moment, then laughed. "You're wrong. I wasn't the one who destroyed your Dugu family." With that said, she pointed at Zhou Xian. "It's him." Zhou Lian looked down at Zhou Xian, and when he saw Zhou Xian he frowned. "You have the blood of my Dugu clan." Zhou Xian said nothing. Zhou Lian then looked at Zhou Xian. "You are also a member of my Dugu clan." Zhou Xian said indifferently, "You should be the ancestor's soul." Zhou Lian said in a low voice, "Since the two of you are members of my Dugu clan, Why do you want to annihilate the Dugu clan? Zhou Xian chuckled. Ancestor, won't you know if you just search Zhou Lian's memories? Zhou Lian glanced at Zhou Xian. After a while he slowly closed his eyes. Not long after, Zhou Lian broke through. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Suddenly he opened his eyes. At this moment he already knew the ins and outs of the matter, including the cause and effect. Jian Zizai looked at Zhou Lian in front of him and smiled without saying anything. A moment later, Zhou Lian looked down at Yi Xian with a cold gaze. No matter what, you have the blood of the Dugu clan, yet you wantonly slaughtered your clansmen. You, Yi Xian suddenly said, are they the only ones allowed to kill me, but I can't kill them? Zhou Lian narrowed his eyes. Your heart is not with the Dugu clan. There is no point in keeping you alive. As he spoke, he was about to make a move, but at this moment, Jian Zizai suddenly smiled and said, do you think I don't exist? As she spoke, she casually slapped out. Zhou Lian did not even have time to react before he was sent flying hundreds of feet away. Not only that, but his body instantly shattered, leaving only his soul. Two souls. One was Zhou Lian's soul, and the other was the Dugu clan's patriarch's soul. The Dugu clan's patriarch was stunned, then looked at Jian Zizai in shock. Who are you? Jian Zizai smiled and said, someone you can't afford to offend. As her voice fell, she grabbed the air. With this grab, the Dugu clan's patriarch's soul was directly caught in her palm. The next moment she gently squeezed it. The Dugu clan's patriarch's soul directly turned into nothingness. At the side, Zhou Lian's expression changed greatly. He turned around and ran. The little demonic beast below immediately pounced forward. Very quickly, a blood-curdling scream was heard from the side. Yi Xian looked at the little monster. The latter was greedily licking its tongue. Zhou Lian's soul had just been swallowed by it. Yi Xian looked at Jian Zizai. Thank you. Jian Zizai smiled and said, you've thought it through? Yi Xian nodded. I've thought through many things. Jian Zizai smiled slightly. The current you can barely be considered not bad. There is still a certain distance between you and a genius. Yi Xian chuckled. Take it slow, take it slow. Jian Zizai laughed. Good, very good. With this state of mind, great things can be achieved. As she spoke, she looked up at the end of the horizon. It's time for me to go. Yi Xian asked, Senior, where are you going? Jian Zizai smiled and said, to where I should go. Speaking of this, she looked at the little monster. The little monster hurriedly lowered its head. Jian Zizai said softly, this beast is the God clan's guardian beast, the emperor dog. It has an evil nature and only respects the strong. With your current strength, it is impossible for you to make it willingly submit. Keeping it by your side can be said to be a mixed blessing and disaster. You make your own choice. Yi Xian looked at the little monster. The little monster still had its head lowered, so its expression could not be seen. Yi Xian smiled slightly. He then looked at Jian Zizai and said with a smile, Miss Jian, I want to recognize you as my godsister. What do you think? Jian Zizai was stunned for a moment, then laughed out loud. She smiled and pointed at Yi Xian. You slippery fellow. If you become my brother, even if you give this monster 10,000 guts, it will not dare to hurt you. This idea of yours is very good. Not far away, the little monster glanced at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Jian Zizai looked at Yi Xian, then smiled and said, okay, I recognize you as my brother, huh? After saying that, she turned around and floated towards the depths of the starry sky. At the same time, her voice came again, but this time it was Xianxia transmission. Be careful of the 5th floor of the prison tower. As the voice faded, Jian Zizai had completely disappeared. 5th floor. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He quickly immersed his consciousness into his body. At the moment, all of the seals in the prison tower had been loosened. However, the 5th level had been loosened the most. However, his consciousness could not enter it at all. What was inside? Yi Xian frowned. It would be a lie to say that he was not worried, because the higher he went, the more powerful the prisoners were. Jian Zizai, this chapter is not finished, please continue. Jian Zizai's strength had already surpassed his understanding. The guy on the 5th floor was probably even stronger than Jian Zizai. Now he only hoped that the gods on the 5th floor and the 2nd floor were as easy to talk to as Jian Zizai. Otherwise, he was afraid that his days would be difficult. No, he was afraid that he would not have any days to live. Yi Xian shook his head and temporarily stopped thinking about this troublesome problem. He walked in front of the little monster. The little monster looked at him and did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, "I know you must want to slap me to death." The little monster was expressionless and still did not say anything. Yi Xian said, "Although my sister asked you to follow me, I know very well that you look down on humans from the bottom of your heart and you also look down on me. However, you will not disobey my sister's orders, and you are not following me out of sincerity." At this point he slightly paused and said, 3 years, you will follow me for 3 years. After 3 years you can leave at any time. I will talk to my sister, is that okay? The little monster was silent. Yi Xian smiled and said, "This is the best ending for both of us. What do you think?" The little monster looked at Yi Xian and said, 3 years, I will leave in 3 years. Yi Xian said, "Okay." After saying that he slightly paused and said, "May I ask your current strength?" The little monster was silent for a moment and then said, "Back then my inner core was broken and my strength greatly decreased. Now my strength is equivalent to the human sage realm. Of course, ordinary sage realm experts are far from being a match for me." Yi Xian asked, "Can you recover to your peak?" The little monster looked a little sad. "It will be difficult unless there is a special opportunity." Yi Xian nodded slightly, "I understand." At this time, Zhou Xian walked to Yi Xian's side and said softly, "Lingu." Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand. After a moment he said in a low voice, "Miss Jian said that she was not found in the Gu family. In other words, she might not be in the Gu family. She should be fine." At this point his face was frighteningly gloomy. She might be fine, but there was also a possibility that something was wrong. Healing. Yi Xian sat cross-legged and then took out a pile of purple origin crystals and started to absorb them crazily. What he needed to do now was to recover his body and then look for Yi Ling. As for other things such as the World Prison Pagoda, he did not want to think about them. The Emperor Hound looked at Yi Xian and then walked to the side and sighed softly, aggrieved. To think that it was a dignified Emperor Hound of the celestial race. It used to be so glorious. But now it had to follow a human, and such a weak human at that. The problem was, this human was its little brother. Thinking about this, it sighed deeply again. 3 years. Luckily, 3 years to it was just a snap of the fingers. At this time, 3 people suddenly appeared in the sky not far away. The leader was an old man. The old man's gaze fell directly on Yi Xian. When he saw how weak Yi Xian was, the old man was stunned. The next moment he said excitedly, "Yi Xian, you are injured." Yi Xian looked at the old man. The old man smiled and said, "I would like to invite you to my Bei Wu faction." At the side, the little demonic beast was about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly said, "Okay, I will go with you." The little demonic beast looked at Yi Xian confused. Yi Xian did not answer. Instead he stood up and said, "Let's go." The little demonic beast looked at Yi Xian. Needless to say, this guy must be plotting something. P.S. I don't know if there is a custom in your world. When an old person passes away, they must kneel at night. And when they come to help, they must kneel to whoever they see. I almost couldn't stand these past 2 days. This matter is almost over. Once it's over, I will focus on writing. Thank you for your understanding these days. Because during these few days, basically no readers scolded me. Thank you. End of chapter. Chapter 420. A sinister plot. A big sinister plot. Although the Emperor Dog had not interacted with Yi Xian for long, it knew that this human in front of it looked harmless most of the time, but in reality he was full of evil tricks. Therefore it was always on guard against Yi Xian. In short, this person was very evil. Not far away, Yi Xian slowly walked in front of the old man. The old man was on guard because according to their investigation, the Gu family's destruction was very likely related to Yi Xian. Although they did not believe that Yi Xian could destroy the Gu family, it was better to be cautious. When Yi Xian walked in front of him, the old man was a little stunned. T-transformation realm? Yi Xian nodded honestly. When I was fighting with someone, I suffered a backlash from using a magical technique and my cultivation level plummeted. Is there a problem? The old man stared at Yi Xian. You don't seem to be afraid at all. Yi Xian said softly, "So what if I am afraid? You won't let me go easily, right?" The old man said calmly, "Then let's go." After saying that, he turned and left, his divine sense locked onto Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not escape but followed. Zhou Xian also hurriedly followed. The little demonic beast hesitated for a moment, but also followed behind Yi Xian. Along the way, Yi Xian was expressionless and Zhou Xian quietly followed beside him. In front, the old man turned to look at Yi Xian from time to time. His intuition told him that something was wrong. At that moment, a Bei Wu sect expert beside him suddenly spoke with Xianxia. Should we get rid of him first? The old man shook his head. If the treasure is not with him, how can we find it after killing him? Let's bring him back to the sect first. No matter how powerful he is, he won't be able to escape. The powerhouse from the Bei Wu sect hesitated and said, he might not have destroyed the Gu family, but he did destroy the Dugu family. This person is not simple. The old man nodded. No matter what, bring him back and let the elders deal with him first. With that, he sped up. Behind him, Zhou Xian sent a telepathic message to Yi Xian. Little Xian, the Bei Wu clan has an important position in the Qinyu domain. Their status and power are above the Gu clan. With your current strength. At this point, she didn't continue. Yi Xian said softly, running won't solve the problem. Zhou Xian held onto Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian's hand trembled slightly, but he did not retract it. Zhou Xian said, no matter what, mother will accompany you. Yi Xian lowered his head slightly and said nothing. Soon they arrived at the Black North Mountain. The Black North Mountain was located in the south of the Qinyu domain. It covered an area of 10,000 miles and was surrounded by endless mountain ranges. Above the Black North Mountain was the Bei Wu clan. As soon as they arrived at the foot of the mountain, they saw a towering statue. The statue was 1,000 feet tall and stood in front of the Black North Mountain. Next to Yi Xian, Zhou Xian said softly, Qin Beixian, the founder of the Wu clan. He is a legendary figure. Yi Xian asked, Wu clan? Not the Bei Wu clan? Zhou Xian shook her head. In the Qinyu domain there are the Bei Wu clan and the Nan Wu clan. These two sects used to be one, the Wu clan. However, two geniuses in the sect had a disagreement, so they split into two. If not for that, the Wu clan would not be weaker than the Weiyang Star Palace. Although they split into two, the strength of these two sects is still terrifying. Yi Xian nodded. Nodding his head, he said, I understand. Soon the old man led the group to a large hall in the Bei Wu clan. The hall was called the Martial Arts Hall. The old man walked in. Yi Xian stood there quietly. Zhou Xian held his hand while the little beast followed behind them. The little beast had no aura at all. It looked like an ordinary little beast, so the old man and the others did not care about it. A while later, the old man walked out and glanced at Yi Xian. Come in. With that, he turned around and walked into the hall. Yi Xian, Zhou Xian, and the Emperor Hound also walked in. The hall was very spacious and there were around 30 people inside. The weakest of them was at the Origin Realm and there were two saints. The person in the lead was a beautiful woman who looked to be in her 30s. She wore a tight-fitting robe and her figure was curvaceous. Her breasts were especially large, as if they were about to burst out of her clothes. It was quite a shocking sight. This person was the Grand Elder of the Bei Wu clan, Qin Beixian. Seeing Yi Xian, Qin Beixian suddenly stood up and appeared in front of Yi Xian. In an instant, Yi Xian smelled an intoxicating fragrance from Dao Yi. It was the fragrance of her body. Qin Beixian looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Heroes indeed come from the young. Not only are you talented, but you are also very handsome. The faction leader's whereabouts are unknown. How about this? I will let you join the Bei Wu clan and promote you to the position of young faction leader. What do you think? Yi Xian smiled. What do I have to do that? Qin Beixian smiled. So you don't like the Bei Wu clan? Yi Xian nodded. I don't like it. As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings instantly fell silent. After a moment of silence, an old man in a black robe suddenly stood up and glared at Yi Xian. How dare you? You? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Everyone, I know what you mean. You asked me to come here not because you want me to be the young faction leader, but because you want that treasure, right? Everyone stared at Yi Xian. They did not expect Yi Xian to be so direct. They were caught off guard. In front of Yi Xian, Qin Beixian suddenly smiled. You have surprised us. Then she looked at Yi Xian and said, You dared to come here and be so calm. I think you have a trump card or something that you can rely on. Why don't you show it to us? Yi Xian said softly. The Dugu family wants that treasure but they don't have it anymore. The Gu family wants that treasure but they don't have it anymore. The Bei Wu clan leader also wants that treasure, but he doesn't have it anymore. What, the Bei Wu clan wants it too? Hearing this, Qin Beixian narrowed his eyes. Are you threatening us? Yi Xian smiled. You can think of it that way. Qin Beixian's lips curled into a cold smile. Then show us what you're relying on. As soon as he finished speaking, a powerful aura swept towards Yi Xian. Wherever this aura passed, the space trembled as if it was about to explode. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, a paw suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Then the paw gently slapped forward. Boom. That aura instantly disappeared without a trace. At this moment, everyone looked at the Emperor Hound in front of Yi Xian. Gradually, everyone's expression became serious, including Qin Beixian's. Yi Xian opened his right hand and a sword suddenly appeared on the field. It was not the soul-suppressing sword but the sword at the top of the pagoda. With the appearance of this sword, everyone's expression changed and they all retreated. Even the Emperor Hound's eyes looked serious. This sword was 2F** King terrifying. The sword quietly floated in the air. It was very calm but it gave off a strong sense of oppression. Yi Xian said softly, if the Bei Wu clan wants to fight, I Yi Xian will fight you any time. Not far away the black-robed old man sneered. How arrogant. Yi Xian suddenly turned to the black-robed old man and said, I can even destroy the Gu family. Why would I fear the Bei Wu clan? The black-robed old man said fiercely, why would the Bei Wu clan fear you? Yi Xian suddenly said, then let's fight. As soon as he finished speaking he took a step back. The Emperor Hound in front of him suddenly slapped down with its paw. Boom. A monstrous aura erupted from its body like a volcano. In an instant the surrounding hall collapsed and the surrounding experts quickly retreated. The little demon beast was about to attack when Yi Xian suddenly said, wait. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the little demon beast stopped. Qin Beixian and the others who were about to attack also stopped and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian pointed at the sword in front of him and said softly, Master, your disciple is incompetent. I can't kill all the enemies by myself. Please help me, Master. As soon as he finished speaking, he gently held the sword with 2 fingers. Buzz. The sound of the sword suddenly rang out. In an instant the space within a radius of 1,000 feet cracked, and the ground under everyone's feet collapsed. At this moment everyone was stunned. The Emperor Hound also looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. Although Yi Xian's expression was extremely calm, his body was tumbling like a tidal wave. Not only that, he swallowed back the blood he almost spat out a few times. He had only touched the sword lightly and his whole body almost collapsed. This sword was too terrifying. At the scene, everyone looked at the sword in front of Yi Xian. In their eyes there was fear, deep fear. The pressure that the sword gave off was too great. And Yi Xian was obviously not the owner of the sword. So the question was, who was the owner of the sword? How powerful was the other party? Thinking up to this point, the expressions of the experts from the northern martial sect gradually turned solemn and serious. At this moment, Yi Xian walked to the Emperor Hound's side and looked at Qin Beixian and the others. Do you really think that I, Yi Xian, am alone? Do you really think that I have no backing? Wrong, all of you are wrong. Saying this, he smiled coldly. All of you are very wrong. The Emperor Hound looked at Yi Xian suspiciously because its instincts told it that Yi Xian was talking nonsense. However, as Yi Xian had said, it also felt that there might be someone behind Yi Xian. Qin Beixian stared at Yi Xian. Who is behind you? Yi Xian said calmly, you really can't guess? Qin Beixian frowned slightly. After a moment she seemed to have thought of something and her expression changed. Weiyang Star Palace? Weiyang Star Palace. This was the biggest force in the Weiyang star field and could be said to be the most mysterious force. Only this force and sacred ground could so easily wipe out the Gu family and the Dugu family. Hearing Qin Beixian's words, Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, you know too much. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Qin Beixian's expression instantly changed. You want to silence me? Chapter 421. Silencing them. Yi Xian's eyes twitched. This woman was really imaginative. Yi Xian did not say anything. He turned around and left with Zhou Xian. After a few steps he suddenly stopped. I'll ask you one last time. Does the Beiwu clan want to fight? Inside the hall, the elites of the Beiwu clan did not look good. Arrogant. Yi Xian was too arrogant. The more arrogant Yi Xian was, the more they feared him. This meant that Yi Xian was not afraid because he had someone backing him up. Just like that, under the watchful eyes of the elites of the Beiwu clan, Yi Xian disappeared with Zhou Xian and the Emperor Hound. After Yi Xian left, an old man beside Qin Beixian said, "Do you really believe that he is from the Weiyang Star Palace?" Qin Beixian said calmly, "Is that important?" The old man looked at Qin Beixian. Qin Beixian looked into the distance. "Are you confident that you can defeat that beast?" The old man shook his head. He was a saint, but that beast still gave him a sense of danger. Qin Beixian said again, "Such a powerful beast is willing to follow him. Even if it is not the Weiyang Star Palace, there must be a powerful force behind him. And that sword? It is only a sword, but it can suppress our aura. How strong do you think the owner of the sword is?" The old man was silent. Qin Beixian said softly, "The fall of the sect leader is definitely related to this person. Even with the sect leader's power, he was killed without a trace." Then she shook her head. "No matter what, this treasure is not something the Beiwu clan can have. If we take it by force, as he said, we will be the next Dugu family and Gu family." The old man was silent for a moment, then sighed. "What a pity." Qin Beixian smiled. "There is no pity. At least the overall strength of the Beiwu clan is still there. If you want to talk about pity, it is the Dugu family and the Gu family. Their 10,000 years of heritage are gone. What a pity." As she spoke, she raised her head and looked into the distance. "Let's just wait and see who's next. Southern Martial Sect? The Sacred Ground? Or the Weiyang Star Palace?" The old man said in a deep voice, "Will these forces attack him?" Qin Beixian smiled and said, "It's too tempting." This was especially true for the Holy Land and the never-ending Star Palace. If the Holy Land wanted to surpass the never-ending Star Palace, they would need a great opportunity. If the Holy Land wanted the treasure on Yi Xian, the never-ending Star Palace would definitely not sit idly by. Just watch, this heaven region will become more and more chaotic. After leaving the Beiwu clan, Yi Xian returned to the Endless Purgatory. Now the Endless Purgatory was like his home in the heaven region. He had never thought of hiding because he knew very well that all the powers in the heaven domain were paying attention to him. The more he hid, the more dangerous it would be. The more open he was, the more apprehensive the people in the dark would be. Healing. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and continued to heal himself. Right now he was severely injured both internally and externally. He had to recover as soon as possible. Otherwise, he wouldn't have any battle strength left. Just like that, 2 days later, Yi Xian's injuries were basically healed. After recovering, he was still in the Qi Change realm. He did not choose to break through. After his injuries were healed, he swept through the storage rings in the World Prison Pagoda. Previously, when he used the World Prison Pagoda to kill Gu Qian and the others, there were more than 30 storage rings in the World Prison Pagoda. If he didn't look, he wouldn't have known, but he was shocked. The 30 storage rings added up to more than 15 million purple source crystals. In addition to his original purple source crystals, he now had 32 million purple source crystals. Other than that, there were 3 sage-grade treasures in the storage rings. They were a set of armor, a long axe and a long staff. Although they were all sage-grade, Yi Xian didn't really like them, because he now had the God set and the soul-suppressing sword. He didn't know what grade the soul-suppressing sword was, but without a doubt it was definitely not lower than the God set. It might even surpass it. Anything that could attract Jian Zizai's attention was definitely not ordinary. And what he could use now, other than the God set, was the sage-grade sword case, the fairy spirit sword and the dark azure sword. But this was far from enough. Now only the God set and the soul-suppressing sword could be used in public. Because the opponent he was facing now was completely different from before. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment and then he looked at Zhou Xian. "Is there a place in the heaven region that sells things?" Zhou Xian asked. "You want to buy something?" Yi Xian nodded. "I want to buy a batch of swords and find someone to help me find Ling. Yi Ling's whereabouts were unknown, and everyone in the Gu family had been annihilated. He had no way to find Yi Ling, so he had to find someone to help. There was strength in numbers. Zhou Xian fell silent for a moment and then she said, "Weiyang City." "Weiyang City?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. Weiyang Star Palace? Zhou Xian nodded. Weiyang City is the largest city in the Heaven region, and it can be said to be the largest city in the Weiyang Star region. This city has connections with countless realms, including the southern region and the northern region. Even the experts from the demon region often come here to sell or buy things. Therefore, Weiyang City is extremely prosperous. Of course, it is also extremely complicated because there are experts from all over the world and there are experts from the Heaven region. If we want to find Ling, this is the best place to find someone to help. If you want to buy something, this is the most suitable place. But, saying this, she glanced at Yi Xian. Xian, you have a great treasure on you. If you go to this city. Yi Xian smiled. It's fine. If I can't beat them, I will run. If I can beat them, I will kill them. Zhou Xian nodded slightly. Okay. Just like that, Yi Xian brought Zhou Xian and the unwilling Emperor Hound to Weiyang City. It was a bit far, so they took a nebula worship. In the prism pagoda, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him floated the soul-suppressing sword. Ever since the soul-suppressing sword had followed him, he had not properly studied it. According to Jian Zizai, this sword also represented a kind of law. What law? Yi Xian thought for a moment, then reached out to hold the soul-suppressing sword. In an instant he felt his mind become extremely calm. He had never felt this kind of feeling before. At this time, the crisp voice of a woman sounded out in his mind. Young lord, I am made from the strength of countless souls and precious soul crystals. Those who hold me can calm their minds, calm their souls and clear their minds. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, You are the spirit of the soul-suppressing sword? The voice said, Yes. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, What rank are you? The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword said, Above the top-grade saint rank is the immortal rank. It is extremely difficult to go from saint to immortal because it requires a transformation of the treasure itself. It is equivalent to a human stepping into the saint rank from the supreme realm. Not only does it require a transformation of the body, but it also requires an improvement in the state of mind to go from saint to immortal. After immortal is creation. The so-called creation means that the spirit weapon itself has the ability to seize the creation of heaven and earth like me. Yi Xian hurriedly said, You? Tell me in detail. The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword said, Yes, young lord. Humans are composed of the soul and the body. Although the two can be separated, they are indispensable. My special ability is soul-suppressing, soul-splitting and soul-collecting. If young lord uses me to fight with others, you can ignore the opponent's body, defensive treasures and soul protection treasures. Of course, this is only limited to the creation realm. For example, the 3 swords in Young Lord's pagoda can easily destroy my creation ability. However, this kind of treasure should be rare in this world. Therefore, under no special circumstances, Young Lord can suppress the opponent's soul with 1 sword. Yi Xian hurriedly asked again, What about soul splitting? The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword said, Soul splitting is to separate the soul from the body. Within 1,000 feet, I can automatically lock onto the opponent and use my supreme ability to separate the opponent's soul from the body. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression immediately changed. Divine artifact. What is a divine artifact? This is a divine artifact. Yi Xian suppressed the excitement in his heart and asked again, This soul collecting is to collect the soul, right? The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword said, Soul collecting is to subdue the opponent's soul. After subduing it, it can be hidden in my body and refined into a Yin soul. Although the combat power of a Yin soul is not strong, it can freely travel through space and is untraceable. Master once refined millions of Yin souls, so he knows everything in the world like the back of his hand. Of course, this is against the harmony of heaven and is very likely to cause a backlash from the Tendo. Yi Xian was a little excited and agitated. He did not expect this. He really did not expect this soul-suppressing sword to be so terrifying. This could no longer be described as a sword, it was even more terrifying than some Sage Realm experts. As if he thought of something, he hurriedly asked again, Are my God set and Earth God seal at the creation realm as well? The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword said, No, your set can only be considered as a supreme immortal rank. However, if they are fated, it is not impossible for them to step into the creation realm. As for young master's Earth God seal, it is at the creation realm, but its spirit has disappeared. Unless it condenses a new spirit, It can barely be considered as an immortal rank. Xian nodded, and as if he thought of something he asked again, "Did you see the 3 swords in my pagoda? What are their ranks?" The 3 swords. Xian had always been curious about these 3 swords. He was curious about what level they were at. The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword went silent for a moment before saying, "Young master, I am sorry. The 3 swords have exceeded my knowledge, so I do not know their ranks." Xian fell silent. It seemed like the ranks of the 3 swords were much higher than he had imagined. Recollecting his thoughts, Xian asked again, "Previously when we were below, why did you choose to follow me?" The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword went silent. Xian smiled and said, "Don't be embarrassed. You must have seen my potential and excellence, so you chose to follow me, right?" The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword said softly, "No, it's because there is a pagoda inside the little lord. This pagoda is extraordinary. If I follow it, I might have a good fortune. I fancy the small pagoda, not the little lord." Xian. Chapter 422. In the field, Xian's face was full of black lines. "Do you have to be so straightforward? Do you have to be so straightforward? Do you have to be so shameless?" At this time the soul-suppressing sword's voice sounded again, "Young master, actually you are not that bad. You still have some good points. For example, you are extremely thick-skinned. Compared to you, the previous master can't compare at all." Xian. The spirit of the soul-suppressing sword continued, "Moreover, although the young lord's talent isn't that great, the young lord's luck is great. You know, some people are born with things that others struggle their entire lives to obtain, such as the young lord." Stop. Xian hurriedly said, "Are you praising me or insulting me?" The soul-suppressing sword spirit said, "Young master doesn't have to care about this because luck is also a kind of strength." Xian. The soul-suppressing sword spirit said again, "Young master, do you have any other doubts?" Xian said seriously, "Can I completely control you now?" The soul-suppressing sword spirit said, "No. Because young master's soul is not strong enough. No young master's soul has reached this level at this stage. It is already considered rare. However, if you want to completely control me, it is far from enough. Now young master can use me twice a day. After 2 times, young master's soul will suffer a backlash. Young master definitely doesn't want to experience that kind of pain." Twice. Xian's expression was calm. He had already guessed that because there would be a backlash when using the god set, let alone this soul-suppressing sword. Fortunately, his soul was strong, otherwise he might not even be able to use it once. No matter what, it was still a good thing because he had another trump card. At this time the soul-suppressing sword's spirit suddenly said, "Young master, can I walk around?" Xian smiled and said, "Why?" The soul-suppressing sword's spirit said, "This tower is not a 4-dimensional object. If I come into contact with it more, I might have new gains. I hope young master can fulfill my wish." Xian smiled and said, "Go shopping." With Xian's approval, the soul-suppressing sword immediately turned into a sword light and disappeared. Just as Xian was about to cultivate, Xiaolinger flew in front of him. Xiaolinger glanced at the soul-suppressing sword that was floating in the distance and asked, "Who is it?" Xian smiled and said, "A sword." "Oh." Xiaolinger lowered his head slightly. He seemed to be in a bad mood. Xian gently rubbed Xiaolinger's little head. "What's wrong? You seem a little unhappy?" Xiaolinger said softly, "I can feel that in the 5th floor, there is a very evil aura. I am afraid." 5th floor. Xian's face changed. He lifted his head to look at the 5th floor. What exactly was there? Xiaolinger gently pulled on Xian's sleeve and said softly, "I'm afraid." Xian smiled and said, "Don't be afraid." As he spoke, he pointed upwards. "Do you see those 3 swords? With them, the guy in the 5th floor will not dare to hurt you." 3 swords. Xiaolinger blinked and then grinned. "That seems to be true." Saying that, she turned and ran, but she quickly ran back to Xian with a fruit in her arms. She handed the fruit to Xian and said, "Eat it." Xian smiled and said, "Okay." Xiaolinger smiled brightly and continued to water her spirit fruit. Xian ate the fruit in his hand. Very quickly, a wave of pure spiritual energy spread out from his body, and in an instant he felt his whole body was extremely comfortable. "Good stuff." Yi Xian was a little surprised. He had underestimated the effect of this spirit fruit. If he sold this fruit, he would definitely be able to get a lot of purple source crystals. But now he did not lack money. Yi Xian calmed himself down. Right now his sword spirit had dissipated, but it did not mean that it had disappeared. Rather, he wanted to gain a new understanding of his good and evil sword spirit. Good and evil. This time he did not want to walk on both sides. He decided to walk on the evil side first. Because in this world, if one was not evil, he would not be able to stand firm and live for long. Evil sword intent. Yi Xian completely suppressed the good sword intent and crazily released the evil sword intent. Soon an evil aura appeared around him. What was good? What was evil? This question had always puzzled him because there was no standard definition of good and evil. But at this moment he did not think too much about it. He only wanted to develop his evil side. Evil. Human nature was good, but in fact it was accompanied by evil. Since he came from Green Firmament world, he realized that this world was full of evil. Especially now that he had the prison pagoda, he could feel the evil of countless people. In the past he only cared about the good and evil of an individual. But now he realized that he might have been wrong. Good and evil not only depended on one's own good and evil, but also the good and evil of others. Just like that, time passed bit by bit. Inside the prison pagoda, Yi Xian's evil sword intent grew stronger, and his expression gradually became ferocious, because at this moment his mind was filled with evil thoughts. Outside, the nebula warship suddenly stopped. In front of them there was a huge nebula warship that blocked their way. The Emperor Hound was lying on the deck of the nebula warship, seemingly asleep. Zhou Xian's expression was a little solemn because they did not come with good intentions. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Xian. The middle-aged man wore a loose robe and hid his hands in his sleeves. He had an inexplicable smile on his face. I heard that Yi Xian is here. Would you like to come out and meet me? Zhou Xian was about to speak, but at this moment, a man walked out from behind her. It was Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression was calm. He walked to Zhou Xian's side and faced the middle-aged man. What's the matter? The middle-aged man sized up Yi Xian and narrowed his eyes. Qi change realm. Yi Xian nodded. I was fighting with someone and used a divine technique. I suffered a backlash and my realm dropped. I'm slowly recovering now. Is there something you need from me? The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian. I heard that you have a supreme treasure in your hands. I'd like to see it. I wonder if you're willing. Yi Xian smiled. Why wouldn't I be willing? It's just an item. If you want to see it, feel free. As he spoke, Yi Xian opened his palm and a seal appeared in it. The Earth God's seal. When he saw the Earth God's seal, the middle-aged man frowned. No, I heard that the supreme treasure is a Xiaota. Yours is a seal. Yi Xian smiled. You found out quite clearly. My seal is also an item from the tower. However, since you want to see the tower, I'll show you the tower. As he spoke, he formed a seal with both hands as if he was about to release something. However, the middle-aged man's expression changed. Wait. Yi Xian faced the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian. Are you going to play some tricks? Yi Xian shook his head. No. I've already become like this. What tricks can I play? The middle-aged man stared at Yi Xian. At this moment he was extremely vigilant. No, it should be said that he was somewhat fearful. From the beginning until now, Yi Xian was too calm. So calm that it was abnormal. Under normal circumstances, Yi Xian should be afraid. After all, he was only at the Qi transformation realm. However, Yi Xian was too calm and cooperative. There was definitely something wrong when something was out of the ordinary. The middle-aged man said in a low voice, Yi Xian, that supreme treasure will only bring you endless trouble. Do you understand? Yi Xian nodded. He said seriously, I understand. That's why I'm willing to give this supreme treasure to you in order to protect myself. As he spoke, an illusory Xiaota suddenly appeared between his brows. Seeing this, the middle-aged man retreated. His expression was extremely ugly. Yi Xian, what kind of trick are you playing? Yi Xian had an innocent expression. I'm not playing any tricks. I just want to give this treasure to you. You don't want it? The middle-aged man's expression was frighteningly dark. Yi Xian, his intuition told him that something was wrong. Very wrong. However, he was not willing to leave just like that. Moreover, if he left just like that, how could he answer to his superiors? The middle-aged man's expression fluctuated. He said, "Put the treasure in front of me. I'll take it myself." Xian nodded. "All right." After he finished speaking, the illusory pagoda between his brows suddenly floated out, and then steadily landed in front of him. Xian, on the other hand, pulled Zhou Xian back a dozen steps. The middle-aged man did not take the world prison pagoda. He just looked at Xian, his hands trembling. How could Xian hand over such a supreme treasure so easily? There's a conspiracy. What a huge plot. Not only did the middle-aged man not move forward, but he also took a few steps back. At the side, the emperor hound suddenly opened its eyes and looked at the middle-aged man. It shook its head and looked at Xian. This human has too many tricks up his sleeves. I have to be careful in the future. At this moment, Xian suddenly said, "Don't you want it?" The middle-aged man said in a low voice, "Xian, what kind of trick are you playing?" The last sentence was almost a roar. Xian said seriously, "I'm not playing any tricks. It's just as you said. Having such a supreme treasure in my possession is a disaster for me. As such, I've decided to give it away. This way I can avoid a lot of trouble and cultivate in peace. It can be said that it's killing several birds with one stone." As he spoke, he pointed at the Xiaota not far away. "Quick, take it away. I really don't want to see it anymore." In the air, the middle-aged man stared at Xian. He had never felt so conflicted in his life. At this moment, Xian smiled and said, "I'm sincere. Don't worry, take it away. There's definitely no conspiracy." The middle-aged man looked deeply at Xian, then turned and left. In the end, he decided not to take it, because it told him that Xian was plotting something. If he really went to take it, he would definitely lose his life. As such, he chose to leave. At this moment, Xian, who was not far away, suddenly said, "Wait." The middle-aged man stopped and turned to look at Xian. Xian's expression was cold. "Take it. Take it. If you don't, you're not giving me face." The middle-aged man's face twitched and he roared, "I already don't want it. What else do you want?" Chapter 423. Aggrieved. The middle-aged man was undoubtedly very aggrieved now. What? He knew that there must be a conspiracy. Also, Xian was so calm. He must have something to rely on. Don't want. Xian didn't want to give up. What was going on? Below, Xian put away the prison pagoda and walked to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's expression was extremely guarded. Xian said softly, "I don't know what force is behind you. Go back and tell them that if they want to mess with me, I, Xian, will accompany them at any time. And we won't stop until one of us is dead." Then he turned around and returned to Zhou Xian's side. "Let's go." Zhou Xian nodded slightly. Soon the nebula warship started and disappeared into the vast starry sky. In the sky, the middle-aged man immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He looked deeply at the place where Xian's nebula warship disappeared, then turned around and left. Soon the middle-aged man arrived at a starry sky. He bowed slightly in front of him. "Sect leader." Then the space in front of him suddenly trembled. Then a shadow quietly appeared. The middle-aged man told him what had happened. After that, he stood quietly to the side. After a while, the shadow said softly, "This person went to the northern martial clan but came out safely." What does this mean? It means that he must have something powerful to rely on. The northern martial clan doesn't dare to touch him. I asked you to come here this time to test him. Now it seems that this person is not as simple as he looks. The middle-aged man said in a low voice. Although his cultivation level has dropped, he is still extremely calm. He definitely has something to rely on. Furthermore, the little demonic beast beside him, although it looks ordinary, it is precisely because of this that I feel that it is not simple. In short, it gives me an extremely dangerous feeling. The shadow nodded slightly. The southern martial clan will not get involved in this for now. If I am not wrong, the news of Xian coming to Weiyang City should spread quickly. By then there will be many people looking for trouble with him. Then we will know what trump card he has. The middle-aged man said in a low voice. "Sect leader, did the Holy Land and Weiyang Star Palace do anything?" The phantom said softly, "Because of this is the scariest. They're either afraid of each other or they don't dare to move. No matter what, let's watch and see." As the voice faded, the phantom quietly disappeared. The middle-aged man also disappeared. In the vast starry sky, a nebula warship shuttled through like a meteor. Zhou Xian stood quietly on the deck of the ship. Beside him was Zhou Xian. The emperor dog was still lying on the deck not far away, still sleeping. Ever since it followed Zhou Xian, it suddenly lost all interest in life. Beside Zhou Xian, Zhou Xian said softly, "Don't worry, Ling, or we'll definitely be fine." Zhou Xian shook his head. From Qingqing until now, Ling has suffered too much because of me. Zhou Xian looked at the starry sky in the distance and said softly, "It's my fault. If I hadn't left that ring for you." Zhou Xian looked at Zhou Xian. "It has nothing to do with you. If you hadn't left the ring, I and my sister would have died in Qingqing. As Sword Celestial Sister said, you have to pay for what you get." Saying this, he looked at the starry sky in the distance. "From Qingqing until now, I've discovered a truth. There are many times in this world where there's no right or wrong, only strong or weak. Reasoning doesn't work in this world. This world is full of evil. At least that's what I feel." As he said this, he raised his right hand slightly. A black sword aura appeared between his fingers. The sword aura formed by the evil sword intent. Zhou Xian chuckled. "When you meet evil people, you have to be more evil than them." As he said this, he bent his finger and the sword aura floated out. Soon, the sword aura disappeared into the vast starry sky. Zhou Xian's expression changed. Not only Zhou Xian but the emperor dog also opened its eyes and looked at Zhou Xian, a trace of disbelief in its eyes. This was because where Zhou Xian's black sword aura was, the space was torn apart like a piece of paper. To be able to tear apart space so easily, this was something that only a supreme powerhouse could do easily. The current Zhou Xian was completely different from the previous Zhou Xian. The seriousness on Zhou Xian's face gradually turned into relief. "You're even more outstanding than your father." Saying this, she suddenly stopped. Zhou Xian said softly, "He's not a member of the Yi family, is he?" Zhou Xian shook her head. "He's a member of the Yi family, but when the time comes I'll tell you everything, okay?" Zhou Xian nodded and did not continue asking. Respect. Although he had never called Zhou Xian mother, he still respected her. This was because Zhou Xian did not deliberately abandon him and his sister back then. She did it for their own good. Based on this, he could not hate her no matter what. Zhou Xian withdrew his thoughts and stopped thinking about this problem. He turned and walked in front of the Emperor Hound. The Emperor Hound glanced at him but did not speak. Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Senior, I want to inquire about something. Now that the Shen clan is no longer around, those treasures of the Shen clan," the Emperor Hound said calmly, "give up on that idea." Zhou Xian was puzzled. "Why?" The Emperor Hound said calmly, "The Shen clan has been destroyed. Those treasures have naturally been looted, but," Zhou Xian hurriedly asked, "But what?" The Emperor Hound was silent. Zhou Xian said seriously, "Do you want the Shen clan to reappear in the world?" The Emperor Hound looked at Zhou Xian and sneered. "Are you trying to fool me again?" Zhou Xian said seriously, "Although the Shen clan has been destroyed, I believe that not all of them were killed. There are still some Shen clan members left. If we can gather them," the Emperor Hound sneered. "You don't have that ability. Moreover, you are not a Shen clan member." Zhou Xian hurriedly said, "My sister, Jian Zizai is." The Emperor Hound was stunned. Zhou Xian said again, "My sister Jian Zizai is a pure Shen clan member? Moreover, she is the daughter of the former patriarch of your Shen clan." The Emperor Hound shook its head. "She doesn't care about the Shen clan." Zhou Xian hurriedly said, "I care." The Emperor Hound looked at Zhou Xian and said angrily, "What's the use of you caring? You are not her." Zhou Xian said seriously, "Who am I? I am her brother. From a certain point of view, I am also half a Shen clan member. Moreover, think about it, if you approve of me and allow me to enter the divine race to obtain some inheritance and treasures, even if my sister still has resentment towards the divine race, she will definitely let go of her resentment for my sake. She might even help me, and helping me is the same as helping the divine race." Hearing Zhou Xian's words, the Emperor Hound was stunned. Soon it fell into deep thought. Zhou Xian hurried to say, "I'm just a button between the Protoss and my sister. As long as I'm here, the relationship between the Protoss and my sister will definitely be eased. Of course, on the condition that you treat me well." The Emperor Hound glanced at Yi Xian. The Xin clan will submit to her, but they will not submit to you. Yi Xian smiled and said, in that case, there is no need for me to work for my sister. I was thinking of persuading her to help the Xin clan. That way the Xin clan might be able to stand up again. Forget it. With that he turned and left. Wait. The Emperor Hound suddenly said. Yi Xian stopped and turned to face the Emperor Hound. What? The Emperor Hound said in a deep voice. Can you persuade her? Yi Xian smiled and said, besides me, who else do you think can persuade her? The Emperor Hound fell silent for a moment before it said, the Xin clan is not in this star field and I don't know how many of them are still alive. Once you are done here you can come with me to the Xin clan. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. All right. The Emperor Hound said in a deep voice, human, I know that you value my Xin clan's treasure. However, if you can really persuade her, I am willing to follow you and even submit to you. Because only she can revitalize the Xin clan and bring it back to the world. Yi Xian smiled and said, actually, it is not your fault that she left the Xin clan, nor is it the fault of the entire Xin clan. If anyone is wrong, it should be your patriarch. The Emperor Hound shook its head. My Xin clan values men over women. Yi Xian smiled and said, now if she is willing to become the patriarch of the Xin clan, would you turn your back on her? The Emperor Hound shook its head and said, she will not come back to be the patriarch. I only hope that she will not hate the Xin clan. Possible help the Xin clan. Yi Xian said softly, I will do my best. With that he turned and left. Behind him the Emperor Hound suddenly said, human, actually you are not bad. At least even if you are bad in a straightforward manner. Yi Xian smiled and said, thank you for the compliment. As he spoke he looked up into the distance. In the depths of the star field, a wall had appeared. The wall stretched across the star field and was so wide that one could not see its end. It was also very tall, at least 1,000 feet high. In the center of the wall there was a road floating in the star field. The road was 1,000 feet wide and led to the end of the city. And above the center of the wall there were 3 large words. Weiyang City. Magnificent. This was Yi Xian's first impression. The Weiyang City in front of him was the largest city he had ever seen. Looking at this city he felt from the bottom of his heart how small humans were. Countless star cloud warships flew around Weiyang City. Although there were many star cloud warships, they were all orderly and not chaotic. Beside Yi Xian, Zhou Xian said softly, this is the largest city in the Weiyang star field. There are all kinds of people in this city. Yi Xian said, won't it be chaotic? Zhou Xian shook her head. There will be minor chaos, but there will never be major chaos. No one dares to cause major chaos here because the Weiyang Palace Lord is here. Weiyang Palace Lord. Yi Xian looked at Zhou Xian. Is she very powerful? Zhou Xian gently rubbed Yi Xian's head and said with a smile, not very powerful but very, very powerful. She was the one who forcefully opened up the Weiyang starfield. After she established the Weiyang starfield, she fought everywhere and conquered the entire starfield. Moreover, it is said that even the heavens dare not cover her eyes and the earth cannot bear her feet. In short, she is the most powerful person in the Weiyang starfield on the surface. Yi Xian frowned slightly. On the surface? Zhou Xian nodded. There are 2 people who can compete with her. P.S. Working hard to restore the update. Thank you for your support. Don't forget your original intention and continue to work hard. Chapter 424. Yi Xian looked at Zhou Xian quietly, waiting for her to continue. Zhou Xian said softly, one of them is the founder of the martial sect, Bu Tianxing. This person's martial arts are divine, and he once shattered a small world with one punch. Shattered a small world with one punch. Yi Xian's expression suddenly became serious. The Azure world was equivalent to a small world, which meant that the other party could destroy the entire Azure world with one punch. This kind of strength could be described as heaven-defying. Zhou Xian continued, besides that there is another person. I don't know his name but he knows. Just as she finished speaking, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of them. Halt. Yi Xian and Zhou Xian looked at the middle-aged man who said, the Star Cloud warship is not allowed to enter the city. Put it away immediately. After saying that, he turned and disappeared into the distance. Yi Xian put away the Star Cloud warship and looked at Zhou Xian. Let's go in. Then he walked towards Weiyang City with Zhou Xian and the Emperor Hound. When they walked to the city gate, Xian could feel the grandeur of Weiyang City more clearly. The city was really too big. If one stood on the city wall and looked down, one would be as small as an ant. And to enter the city, one had to pay 100 purple origin crystals. Thinking of the daily flow of people, Xian could not help but shake his head. What did it mean to make money? This was what it meant to make money. After handing over the purple origin crystals, Xian walked into the city with Zhou Xian and the Emperor Hound. The roads in the city were very wide, and the buildings on both sides were well proportioned. Although there were many people, it did not seem crowded at all. Prosperous. This Weiyang City was truly prosperous. More prosperous than any city he had ever seen. Beside Xian, Zhou Xian said softly, "There are people from all over the world in this Weiyang City. These people represent all kinds of forces, and there are also some itinerant cultivators. We have to be careful in everything we do in the city." Xian nodded. Understood. Just as Zhou Xian was about to speak, Xian suddenly turned his head and looked to the right. Standing on the wall to the right was a woman. The woman was about 16 or 17 years old. Her hair reached her waist and there were a few braids in it. She was dressed very simply. She wore a green cotton skirt, a pair of linen shoes and a cloth bag on her shoulder. Of course, what attracted Xian was the painting on the wall. On the wall was a landscape painting. The background of the painting was a blue sky and white clouds. Below it was a waterfall. Under the waterfall, water splashed everywhere. Beside the pool, weeds were everywhere. There was also a shepherd boy riding on a cow and playing a flute. The woman's painting was vivid and lifelike. At first glance, it seemed like a real scene. Xian walked over subconsciously. Walking up to the woman, he exclaimed, "You draw so well." The woman glanced at Xian. At this moment, Xian saw the woman's face. She had a small face and curved eyebrows. Her eyes weren't big, but they were full of life. Overall, her appearance wasn't very beautiful, but she had an indescribable temperament. The corners of the woman's mouth curled up slightly. Her smile was very bright. "What's good about it?" Xian looked at the painting in front of him and said softly, "Looking at it, I feel very peaceful." The woman smiled and said, "Is that so?" With that said, she turned her head and continued painting. Soon a man appeared in the painting. This person was Xian. His appearance was very lifelike. Xian looked at the woman and was puzzled. The woman's smile was very bright. "In the past 2 days, you are the first person to say that my painting is good. You are also the first person who is willing to look at my painting seriously. So this painting is for you." Xian smiled and said, "It's on the wall. Are you going to give this wall to me?" The woman rolled her eyes at Xian. "Idiot." Xian was stunned. Then he said softly, "I understand. This painting is already in my mind." The woman gave Xian a thumbs up. "Your perception is not bad." With that said, she turned and left. At this moment, Xian suddenly said, "Wait." The woman stopped and turned to look at Xian. Xian took out a piece of wood and then began to carve. Soon, a small wooden figure appeared in Xian's hand. This small wooden figure looked exactly like the woman. It was also very lifelike. Xian handed the small wooden figure to the woman. "This is for you." The woman glanced at the small wooden figure and said with a smile, "I didn't use any martial arts ability. It's pure craftsmanship. Not bad. I'll accept it." With that said, she put away the small wooden figure and turned to leave. However, before leaving, she glanced at the emperor dog. Xian stood in front of the wall. After a moment, he smiled and said, "Let's go." On the way, Xian said, "I need to find a chamber of commerce, a big one. Also, there must be a force in the city that specializes in intelligence." Zhou Xian said softly, "I'll go ask around." Xian nodded. "Let's find a place to stay first." Soon Xian found a restaurant. After checking in, Zhou Xian went to ask around, while Xian let the emperor dog follow her. With the emperor dog around, Zhou Xian's safety would not be a problem. In the room, Xian sat cross-legged on the bed. His right hand's fingers were placed on his knees. There was a black sword light revolving around his fingertips. Evil thought sword intent. During this period, he had been studying his evil thought sword intent. Evil thought, evil thought. He used to only study his own evil thought. Now he began to study other people's evil thought. Then he discovered that other people's evil thought could also be used by him. Besides studying the evil thought sword intent, he would cultivate his realm whenever he had time. Change realm. Until now he had not chosen to break through. He would not break through until he reached his limit. 2 hours later, Zhou Xian returned to the restaurant. In the room, Zhou Xian said, "There are countless merchant guilds in Weiyang City. However, the largest is the Million Treasure Merchant Guild. This merchant guild holds an auction every 5 days. Every auction, good items will appear. If you want to buy or sell something, this merchant guild is a good choice." Xian nodded slightly. "Are there any intelligence agencies in the city?" Zhou Xian nodded. "I found one. It's called the 100 Shao Pavilion. It's said that as long as you can afford it, there's nothing they don't know." Xian stood up. "Let's go to the 100 Shao Pavilion," Zhou Xian said in a low voice. "When we returned, we discovered that there were people following us. Our coming to the city should have been exposed." Xian smiled. "Of course. After all, we didn't do anything to hide." Zhou Xian looked at Xian. "You have that treasure on you. Everyone will target you." Xian said, "I know." Zhou Xian did not understand. "Then why did you come so openly?" Xian said softly, "I can't run away. I don't want to run away anymore. Now I want to see who will be the first to find trouble with me." Zhou Xian said in a low voice. "And then?" Xian smiled. "There's no then. There's only one thing. Do it. We'll kill whoever comes looking for trouble with us." Zhou Xian was speechless. An hour later, Xian brought Zhou Xian and the emperor dog to the 100 Shao Pavilion. When they arrived at the 100 Shao Pavilion, Xian suspected that he had come to the wrong place. There was only a small wooden hut in front of them. It was very small. If not for the words 100 Shao Pavilion written on it, he would have thought that he had come to the wrong place. Beside Xian, Zhou Xian said softly, "Look. The simpler it looks, the more extraordinary it might be." Xian nodded slightly and walked to the front of the wooden hut. At this moment the door opened and Xian walked in. There was a man sitting in the hut. The man glanced at Xian. "Do you know the rules?" Xian shook his head. The man said, "What do you want to know?" Xian said, "To find someone." The man said, "Do you have a portrait?" Xian nodded and then he waved his right hand. Soon a portrait of Yi Ling appeared in front of the man. The man said, 500,000 purple origin crystals. Xian flicked his finger and a storage ring landed in front of the man. The man was about to take the storage ring when a voice suddenly came from the side. "Wait." Hearing this, the man hurriedly stood up. A woman walked out from the side. The woman wore a long black dress and her hair was tied up high. Her figure was quite voluptuous. The woman smiled. "So it's young Master Yi." "Young Master Yi." Xian smiled. "Looks like many people have asked your pavilion to investigate me." The woman smiled. "Yes. Moreover, there are many people asking about young master and they're all big shots." Xian smiled. "I'm here to ask your pavilion to help me find someone, that's all." The woman walked over to Xian. She sized up Xian and smiled. "According to my pavilion's understanding, the number 1 treasure on the rankings is with young Master Yi." Xian nodded. "It's with me." The woman narrowed her eyes. "My pavilion is very interested in this treasure. I wonder if young Master Yi can let me take a look at it?" As the woman finished speaking, an old man suddenly appeared not far behind Xian. "Supreme Realm." Xian shook his head and smiled. "It's you who wants to see it, not the pavilion, right?" The woman slowly clenched her right hand. Just as she was about to speak, Xian suddenly appeared behind her. The woman's body stiffened. There was a small red dot on her throat. The woman looked forward, her eyes filled with disbelief. "You," just as she said a word, blood spurted from her throat. The old man's expression changed. He was about to attack, but as a sword light flashed, the old man's body instantly stiffened. Xian appeared behind the old man. At the same time he held a bloody head in his hand. It was the old man's head. Killing a Supreme Realm expert. In the past he needed to use the God set to kill a Supreme Realm expert. But now he could do it casually. In the room, the man looked at Xian in shock. "You?" Xian ignored the man and turned to look not far away. A white-haired old man had appeared out of nowhere. A Saint Realm expert. The white-haired old man stared at Xian. Yi Xian, how dare you, Yi Xian said. Why don't we talk reason first? I'm willing to talk reason. The white-haired old man said coldly. What reason? You attacked someone from the 100 Paths Pavilion. Even if you're in the right, you deserve to die. Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. Kill him. As Yi Xian's voice fell, the Emperor Hound rushed out. The white-haired old man's expression changed and he quickly attacked. Half an hour later, the white-haired old man was lying on the ground. Yi Xian turned and looked at the man in the room. Tell the pavilion master that I have no intention of becoming enemies with the pavilion. If you want to talk, I'm willing to sit down and talk. If you want to fight, I, Yi Xian, will accompany you at any time. The kind that won't rest until one of us is dead. After speaking, he left with Zhou Xian and the Emperor Hound. Chapter 425. On the way, Zhou Xian said softly, There's no need to do this. Yi Xian smiled. Do you think I'm making a mountain out of a molehill? Zhou Xian nodded. This 100 Shao pavilion is not simple. We really shouldn't make enemies with them. Yi Xian smiled. In this world, only the strong are respected. If you want to win their respect, you must be strong. Otherwise, they won't respect us. They won't think highly of us and they won't be afraid of us. Zhou Xian looked at Yi Xian. You did it on purpose? Yi Xian shook his head. That woman called out a supreme realm expert. This means that it wasn't the 100 Shao pavilion's idea to attack me. It was her own idea. I killed her simply because I couldn't stand the sight of her. Zhou Xian said, You killed the old man at the back to intimidate the 100 Shao pavilion, right? Yi Xian nodded. Zhou Xian asked, Aren't you afraid of angering them? Yi Xian smiled. I don't want to cause trouble, but I'm not afraid of it either. Anyway, there are many people who want to cause trouble for me now. The 100 Shao pavilion doesn't matter. Let's see what they choose. With that, he walked away. Zhou Xian sighed softly and followed him. As soon as Yi Xian, Zhou Xian, and the Emperor Hound returned to the entrance of the restaurant, an old man appeared in front of them. The old man's gaze fell on Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, old man, 100 Shao Pavilion's Hall Master, Mu Zhou. Yi Xian smiled. Senior Mu, is there anything I can help you with? Mu Zhou said indifferently. My 100 Nones Pavilion has no enmity with young Master Yi, yet young Master Yi has killed 3 of my 100 Nones Pavilion's people. Will young Master Yi not give this old man an explanation? Yi Xian smiled. I believe Senior already knows the cause and effect. If Senior is here to talk, then let's go inside. If you're here for revenge, you can make your move now. Mu Zhou stared at Yi Xian. You are very confident. Yi Xian walked in front of Mu Zhou and said in soft voice, I wonder how much stronger Bai Shao Pavilion is compared to Dugu family and Gu family. Mu Zhou narrowed his eyes. Are you threatening us? Yi Xian shook his head. It's just a reminder, a kind reminder. If you want to become enemies with me, Yi Xian, then the 100 Nose Pavilion should first consider yourself. With that, he led Zhou Xian into the restaurant. The monarch dog stared coldly at Mu Zhou. At the entrance, Mu Zhou's expression was somewhat ugly. Become enemies with Yi Xian? Although the pavilion of Bai Shao was powerful, they had never thought of doing so. This was because the pavilion of Bai Shao did not want to obtain the treasure on Yi Xian. Whoever obtained the treasure on Yi Xian's body would be unlucky. Up until now, no one had come looking for trouble with Yi Xian. This was because those without strength did not dare to come looking for Yi Xian. As for those with strength, they were watching from the sidelines. No one wanted to be the Oriole behind the Oriole. The pavilion of Bai Shao Pavilion did not want to. A moment later, Mu Zhou walked into the restaurant. At the tea table, Yi Xian and Mu Zhou sat opposite each other. Zhou Xian sat beside Yi Xian. Yi Xian said, I'll say it again. I have no intention of becoming enemies with your pavilion. Mu Zhou said, My pavilion of Bai Shao Pavilion also has no intention of becoming enemies with young Master Yi. The 3 people who attacked young Master Yi did so on their own accord. It has nothing to do with our pavilion of Bai Shao Pavilion. Yi Xian smiled and said, If that's the case, then this matter is a misunderstanding. Mu Zhou glanced at Yi Xian. It's a misunderstanding. Since the misunderstanding has been resolved, then the old man will take his leave. After saying that, he was about to leave. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, please wait. Mu Zhou looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, I would like to ask your pavilion of Bai Shao Pavilion to help me find someone. Mu Zhou was silent for a moment, then said, Find that little girl? Yi Xian nodded. Mu Zhou said, We have already arranged for someone to go. We will have news in 3 days at most. Yi Xian stood up and cupped his fists. Many thanks. Mu Zhou smiled and said, Young Master Yi is too polite. If there's nothing else, the old man will take his leave. Yi Xian said, Senior, please wait. Mu Zhou nodded. Goodbye. After saying that, he turned and left. Yi Xian picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip. As if thinking of something, he looked at Zhou Xian. Surprised. Zhou Xian nodded. You killed their people, but they are still helping you. Moreover, they are so polite. Yi Xian smiled and said, Strength. In this world, people only respect those with strength. The more arrogant I am, the less courage they have to make an enemy out of me. Because they don't know what exactly is behind me. After saying that, he shook his head and smiled. Actually, there is nothing behind me. After Jian Zizai left, he had no trump cards at all. Because he absolutely could not use the World Prison Pagoda. If he used it again, he would die together with his enemies. As for the Emperor Hound, actually, these forces only needed to send a few Saint Realm experts to restrain it. At that time, with his strength alone, he would not be able to contend against these big forces. And now, these forces all thought that he had a huge force behind him. Therefore, none of them dared to make a move against him. However, Yi Xian knew that this situation would not last long, because there would always be people who could not endure it. Therefore, he had to quickly increase his strength during this time. Purchase swords. Now that he was at the qi change state, there was not much of a problem with his mental state. However, he still needed the devouring sword. Yi Xian did not stay. He left the restaurant with Zhou Xian and the Emperor Hound. As soon as he left the restaurant, he frowned. The Emperor Hound suddenly said, There are some people around us following us. Should we kill them? Yi Xian shook his head. Let them follow us. After saying that, he quickly walked into the distance. After a while, Yi Xian arrived at the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. It must be said that the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce looked extremely grand. There were 12 floors and each floor was very big. Apart from that, he also discovered that there were many people entering and leaving the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. Clearly, the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce was doing very well. As soon as Yi Xian and Zhou Xian entered the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce, a delicate and pretty woman came to greet them. The delicate and pretty woman glanced at the Emperor Hound and said apologetically, Young master, I am sorry, pet beasts are not allowed to enter this shop. Yi Xian was speechless. The Emperor Hound instantly flew into a rage and was about to slap her with its paw when Yi Xian hurriedly stopped it. Calm down, calm down. The Emperor Hound glared angrily at the delicate and pretty woman. The delicate and pretty woman said softly, Young master, your pet beast has a rather bad temper. Yi Xian was speechless. How could this woman say that? Seeing that the Emperor Hound was about to flare up again, Yi Xian hurriedly said, Senior Emperor Hound, why don't you enter the pagoda first? Inside the pagoda. Hearing this, the Emperor Hound's expression changed and it hurriedly shook its head. No. The prison pagoda. It naturally knew a little about the prison pagoda, and it had always been very afraid of Yi Xian's prison pagoda. Thus, it had never entered the pagoda. When he saw that the Emperor Hound didn't want to enter the pagoda, Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he turned around to look at the delicate and pretty woman. He smiled and said, Young miss, will it enter with me? I guarantee that it won't cause any trouble, all right? The delicate and pretty woman shook her head. She was just about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly flicked his finger, and a spatial ring flew over to her. She glanced at it and noticed that there were 500 violet origin crystals within it. The delicate and pretty woman instantly beamed with joy, and she hurriedly put the spatial ring away. Young master, you must make sure that it stays still and doesn't run around. Yi Xian smiled. No problem. The delicate and pretty woman bowed slightly and said, Young master, if you want to buy something, then go to the 2nd floor. If you want to sell something, then go to the 3rd floor. Yi Xian said, Thank you. The delicate and pretty woman smiled. It's my pleasure. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian gazed at the Emperor Hound, and the Emperor Hound said indifferently, Ignorant human. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Don't be angry. You're the guardian beast of the divine clan at any rate, so it's very beneath you to make a fuss about it with a little girl. The Emperor Hound said indifferently, Did I make a fuss about it with her? If I did, then I would have swallowed her a long time ago. Xian smiled, How magnanimous of you, senior. As soon as he finished speaking, he led Zhou Xian and the Emperor Hound to the second floor. As soon as he arrived there, a woman walked over towards him. The woman seemed to be very young and she had a kind smile on her face. May I know what you need, young master? Xian smiled, I want to buy something. The woman grinned, May I know what sword young master is looking for? Xian said, The Saint Rank sword. The corners of the woman's eyes twitched slightly when she heard this, and then she bowed slightly, Young master, come with me. As soon as she finished speaking, she led Xian, Zhou Xian and the Emperor Hound to an elegant room. At the same time, tea and spirit fruits were served to them. Within the room the woman grinned, Young master, do you only need one? Xian asked, How many does your merchant group have? The woman smiled, So long as young master is able to pay the price, we have as many as you want. Xian was visibly moved when he heard this. How confident does this merchant group have to be to dare say such words? Xian thought for a moment and said, How many violet origin crystals does a Saint Rank sword cost? The woman replied, At least 10 million violet origin crystals, and there's no market for it. 10 million. Xian laughed bitterly. At this moment he felt so poor. He only had a total of 32 million violet origin crystals right now. In other words, he could only buy 3 Saint Rank swords at most. Devouring 3 swords might not be enough, so he had to prepare at least 5. Xian thought for a moment and said, I want to sell some things. The woman's eyes lit up. May I know what you intend to sell? Xian waved his right hand, and then 4 Saint Rank treasures appeared before the woman. They were the treasures he'd obtained from killing Zhou Xian and the others in the pagoda of prison. Of course, these weren't the only Saint Rank treasures he possessed. However, the rest were swords and he intended to keep them for himself. As she gazed at the 4 Saint Rank treasures before Xian, the woman suddenly said, Serve the tea. It didn't take long for a woman to walk in with 3 cups of spirit tea. Xian noticed that this spirit tea was completely different from the one he'd just drunk. The woman smiled. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Umo, young master can just call me little you. Xian laughed bitterly in his heart. If he didn't produce these Saint Rank treasures, then this woman probably wouldn't even let him know her name. Umo continued, Young master, these treasures are extraordinary, and they'll be even more profitable if they're auctioned off. We're holding an auction tonight. If you're not in a hurry, then I can arrange for them to be auctioned off tonight. Of course, if you're in a hurry, then we can purchase them at the market price of 10 million violet origin crystals from you. However, this way you'll suffer a loss. Xian thought about it, and just as he was about to speak, a voice came from the side. So it's young Master Yi. Please forgive me for not going out to greet you, young Master Yi. Xian turned around and saw a young man walking over from not far away. Umo hurriedly got up and bowed. Greetings, second young master. The young man ignored Umo and walked in front of Xian. However, his gaze fell on Zhou Xian. When he saw Zhou Xian, the corners of his mouth curled up, and there was a trace of lust in his eyes. As expected of a beauty who was once on the beauty ranking in our heaven region. As expected, if I could kiss her, I'd rather live 10 years less, huh? At the side, Xian suddenly said softly, You want to provoke me on purpose. Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. After saying that, he smiled, Kill them all. Leave none alive. The young man looked at Xian and smiled. Is that so? Such arrogance. I'm so scared The young man's voice stopped abruptly because a sword light had appeared between his eyebrows. The young man was stunned. At the side, Umo hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, this is the grandson of our Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce's great elder. I hope. Xian shook his head. He's not my grandson. After saying that, he slashed twice with his fingers. The young man's arms flew off. P.S. Please buy a ticket. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.